SMITE at the SMITE World Championships. That's what you want out of your player, but this Oni Warriors team has higher expectations than a middle-of-the-pack finish like what PK did during the regular season. So I think Fred is going to step it up. I've got no concerns about him, man. He played so well last year, and otherwise I think I have to say all this or else he's going to hit me like he hit his chair, and I don't think I'd live through that punch, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that chair is more resilient than my jaw, that's for sure. So we'll avoid discussing Fred in any sort of negative light. Reverse bias, I suppose? Bias out of fear? I think that's some type of bias anyway. But Kivo Fred has shown his face a couple of times here, matching the pressure, or attempting to, that Sam for Soccer has put out. And how interesting from Sam here. I mean, first game of the year, big, pivotal matchup against the Warriors. Bit of a heat check at what these rosters look like early, and Sam goes to something like the Thanatos, not a pick that we saw all that often at all last year. Leave it to Sam to pick something like this up, and at least in the early game, make it look okay.
I mean, Sam is not a player who lacks confidence. He's going to feel like he's going to make plays no matter what. And, you know, he's a quieter guy. You're not going to think of him as one of the guys who's ready to go at any given time necessarily. But I really view Sam that way. He knows that it doesn't matter if it's week 7 or week 1. If he thinks Thanatos looks good here, he's going to pick Thanatos. And he's not going to think twice about it. I don't think the fact that it's week 1 registers at all when he's thinking about his pick.
Question is, Aggro, do you think Thanatos looks good here into this matchup? I mean, I suppose if the Dragons are getting the Oni Warriors down within some of that execute threshold, Sam will be hitting it. Is this a matchup where you think Thanatos can flourish?
I think he can. It's a matter of where he gets in his itemization. Up against a god like Loki, where his stealth is not as strong as it used to be, but still frustrating to deal with at times. You want a god that's going to pick Erendite effectively. Thanatos scales much better into the late game than he used to, so I'm not super worried about getting these exorbitant early leads, but he still snowballs very effectively, which we can assume is going to be one of J-Dragon's primary objectives, is to snowball the map like they did a lot last year. So with all that in mind, I think that he can look pretty good here, yeah.
Mike hits level 5, Whirlwind of Rage and Steel and Desert Fury out from Pandacat. Neil still limping away at level 4. Pandacat doesn't have the damage, but he's got the stun over on the throat through space and time. No good, just shy from Hurrywind. You gotta imagine, but here's Sam out of right field. Down he dunks. I didn't even see him coming, and I don't think that Vote did either. First blood over the Dragons.
Vote definitely didn't, because he had beads and ult ready to go, and he's sitting there looking at both of them like, yeah, I kind of wish I would have used one in that moment. A little bit of an odd decision, I think, from Mike to full commit onto the Bacchus, because Bacchus so tanky because of that natural damage mitigation that he has from his passive, and Neil already had the tank boot. So even though Panda lands the vast majority of those Desert Fury spears, they don't really even come that close, truthfully, to killing Neil, but it baits Vote into stepping up in order to try and help. And that's the big thing, is so much of duo lane synergy is knowing, you know, exactly how your dual lane partner is going to play it. Are they going to be okay in that situation? All things like that. And Vote, maybe not exactly sure how comfortable Neil is with those limits, ends up stepping up and becoming the victim of that first blood.
Well, at this point now, it's about cauterizing those wounds. A 1-level lead for both PBM and Pandacat here in the duo lane. Probably not a full level, depending on the way that these waves are going. This Bacchus wants to get aggressive, though. We'll see if Neil still feels comfortable in doing so. This is a 2v2. No junglers anywhere. Stun down onto Pandacat. Vote will just cleave out some damage and back away. Looked more aggro, like Neil's just going for a little bit of pressure, not a full-on commit just yet.
Not too difficult to try and full-on commit to the Xingqian on her lane. You're really just trying to get your Heim towards the later stages. I mean, we've seen what this god can do come late game. Look at what Yarkor did to poor Barracuda yesterday. When Heim starts building crit, because the damage multiplier, because of his slower autos, you start getting some really big numbers really, really quickly. So not only are the Jade Dragons going to have that to worry about, but can we see someone buy a Spectral Armor, please? I mean, please. It's so good against the crit build. I know it feels bad against every other player on the map, but the reality of the situation is, come late game, the enemy ADC is the player that usually matters the most on the map. So if you can build something that's particularly effective against that player, you're going to end up having a much better time come late game. So I'm hoping that if we do see the crit build, which I would anticipate from Vote, that we see some specters.
There is a collapse happening here from the Jade Dragons through space and time. Sends portals beneath the tier 1 tower. No commit, though, from the Dragon squad just yet. Warriors collapsing in on this. Only the solo laners not here to assist. Purple buff invade looked at by Mike. Instead, Hurriwin's going to back off, deal some damage. The Oni Warriors will secure their purple buff, walk themselves away, but you can already see the coordination aggro that these two teams are playing with. Obviously, 4 out of 5 pieces returning for the Dragons. Important that they keep that synergy going, kind of 2 and 3 there for the Warriors, but you can already tell the communication's starting to flow.
And look, even though that play doesn't work out for the Dragons, it's about being proactive. It's about being the ones trying to make things happen on the map. I talked about it yesterday a ton in the Camelot Kings Tartarus Titans matchup. That's really important in these types of moments. Good job by Vote there, using his Gallarhorn, deal himself knockback immunity so that he can't get impaled out of his pillar and set up for the kill. So good little interaction there from Vote. But I just really prefer teams be the aggressors and be the one, use your through space and time aggressively. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You gave it a shot, and we're just going to play a little bit passively up until that through space and time is back up again. Now, Hurry doesn't have any cooldown quite yet. This is a very awkward point in the build path for Giannis. I agree with what Hurry's doing. I think Conduit Gem is better for Giannis than Sands of Time. I know he loves his CDR, but he also really needs that help in the damage department to keep pressure in lane and keep clearing effectively. Now you get to go Chronos Pendant, Spear of Desolation, and/or Soul Gem, and then the other option. My only concern is where you fit your 20% pen, because I do think you need it on this god more often than not. So I'm going to be curious as to how Hurricane balances out reaching that CDR cap, which I think is a necessity for Giannis to be as effective as possible, while still being able to do enough damage to, in particular, Neil Ma, but also Nika.
Especially with how tanky we know Neil and Nika will get by the time this game reaches late game. Sanford Soccer wants nothing to do with that engagement there. Cuvo Fred and Neil Ma combining to the tune of 1 ultimate defensively used by Sanford Soccer. Been quiet over in the solo lane so far here this game. Nika nursing a 1-level lead over Fine OK, both starting off with the Blue Stone. Reinforced Greaves and Stone of Gaia, though, over there for Fine OK. Already aggro. This is going to be a very difficult King Arthur to kill off just with the way that the build has started.
Especially when you consider that Neil is going to be the primary to engage vast majority of the time. Those knockups aren't going to hurt him as much.
Polar Bear Mike now engaging onto Neil. Hurry with through space and time. Point blank. Down goes Neil, and the Jade Dragons happy to find themselves 1 pick. With the way that this game is going, the pace of things here, that 1 pick is all the Jade Dragons maybe were really searching for there, and they're going to get a red buff invade on the back end.
I just love the timing that the Jade Dragons are there. They're there when both buffs are up on the duo side, and they were there for the last time both buffs were up. They tried to use through space and time, didn't work out. All right, cool. We'll back up and not worry about it. We'll try to do it again, and this time Neil ends up being a little bit out of position. Mike plucks him back perfectly. No way Neil is surviving through that. And then it's, we get a red buff for free. Not only do we get that kill, but we get the buff as well. And that it's calculated aggression. It's understanding that just the kill is not enough. The main motivation has to be going for the actual invade itself. And if you happen to get some kills, so be it. We'll be happy for it.
Fantastic, and that puts Hurrywind 1 level ahead. It was a 2-level differential for Neil or Neil under Mike rather, but that shrunk down to about a 1-level lead. Really, these small XP gains starting to build up for the Jade Dragons, and a 1,000 gold lead here as well. And a lot of other games that might not be massive, but this is a Dragons team, even including, I wouldn't even call it a question mark, but the new guy in Hurrywind, you know they can play with a lead as small as 1,000 and push that to the absolute limit if need be. Looking like maybe Nika trying to contest this blue buff over for Fine OK. Neil Maz making his way to the right-hand side of the map as well, while Greater Scorpion is going to get taken down. It looks like successful as well. So Nika invades Fine OK's blue buff with the assistance of Neil close by. And Neil just says, hey, who needs farm in my own lane? I'm going to invade these back camps as well.
Well, Vote needs the farm in his own lane because he is very far behind right now. He's been down about a level and a half since that first blood happened over there in duo because of this repeated pressure. Vote's actually been able to secure his own purples, but he's not coming over to share red. They're not getting any of the neutral camps.
Whoa.
There's a pretty big difference in power level between Panda Cat and Vote, and that's why Jade Dragons are so willing to go for that Greater Scorpion on the Gold Fury side, or Gorp, of course, as we affectionately refer to it as.
Desert Fury from Panda Cat, but Vote yet again will crystal away from the stun. Purple buff, red buff, both respawn. Guess where the dragons are? Right here, ready to invade. It's only Dardes on this Poseidon by the red buff, but now the rest of the warriors collapsing in as well. PBM has the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel should the dragons be looking for an engage, and he's going to have to use it maybe defensively here. Cubo uses the beads, but then immediately dashes right back into PBM. Through space and time gets used. Couple members of the Oni Warriors low, but Panda Cat and PBM certainly not full health either. Now Nika will dash in, silence down. Sanford Soccer takes to the skies, and Nika cavalry charges away. The CC immunity saves him from the stun. Final K left alone on the backline. Sanford Soccer gets stunned by Neil, and down goes to Bacchus, but the big-time Kraken will trade one back onto Sam.
Beautiful Kraken from Dardes. Still not enough to even come close, taking down fine, but you end up trading Neil for Sam in that fight. It looked like it was going to be a great fight for the Jade Dragons. I mean, Nika really, really far forward, and he ends up surviving. But when it's 4v1 on both ends of the team fight, and then Nika is the first one to retreat, it's so often about who can hold their ground the longest. No one expects Nika or Fine to get kills in those scenarios. It's about keeping the damage dealers at bay from the other team so that your damage dealers can handle their frontliner that's on top of you. But Jade Dragons win that race. They force Nika back first. Final K uses his ultimate perfectly to set up and pick somebody up, buy time for the rest of his team to get there. But then it just ends up being too much of a grouping right underneath where Neil comes down. So it's Neil for Sam. Jade Dragons probably not feeling super great about that. A nice play by the Oni Warriors and by Dardes on one of his signature picks in this Poseidon.
The bad news for the Oni Warriors is that gold lead didn't move all that much. I think it was a 500-600 gold swing, but still hovering right around that 2,000 gold lead mark for the Jade Dragons. So small win for the Warriors, but certainly has not got them right back to even with the gold just yet. Nika played big role in that fight there. A lot of eyes of the Dragons on him. Burt some cooldowns allowed Nika to get out and stay alive. Maybe with the CC immunity aggro, you don't feel like you need beads on that Guan Yu. Instead, it's going to be the Sundering Spear. We'll pause, see if the blue buff gets, or purple buff rather, gets dropped down, and it is, and PBM will pick that one up. But Nika maybe adding a little extra burst damage to his team here with that second active pickup.
It's a bit of a risk up against a Xing Chen, because Xing Chen, I mean, he's just going to grab you. If you're in range without CC immunity,
right,
he's going to end up picking you up, and a lot of times that'll get you killed either way. So I'm a little bit surprised, but at the same time, I've got a big appreciation. I just think too many frontliners have been going beads Aegis. I think that you got to force teams to use it to overcommit onto you and just build in a way a little bit less hybrid-like, a little bit more damage, and I think that's what Nika's going for here. I love the Genji's guard instead of something like Ansai.
Whoa! Whoa, Hurrywin sends through space and time, and it connects onto Dardes. Has no chance to play, but it's a Kraken on the back line. The Desert Fury flies through as well, but Neil has jumped in, and he's found Panda Cat. Mike tosses back too with the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel as Nika and Hurrywind will do battle on the back line. Little burst of healing from the Soul Gem. The Giannis will be able to safely make his way away at the end of the day. 2 for 1, Oni Warriors ahead.
Just beautiful initiation by the Jade Dragons, but the Warriors are working together super well right now. I mean, it's too much grouping from Sam and from Panda Cat, and the Oni Warriors punish them perfectly. Loki used to be this character that really wanted you isolated. He wanted you alone the vast majority of the time so that he could get his damage off. But I really think this current iteration of Loki punishes you for grouping up more than spreading out because of that new second ability, that poison that goes out that he just put in mid lane. That damage reduction is massive. And all of a sudden, not only are they dealing significantly less damage, not just to you, but to whoever's around you, but also to, you're dealing more damage to them. You're increasing your damage dealt to them. It's really, really strong. And if your two carries are on top of one another, in that case it was Sam for Soccer and Panda Cat are on top of one another, and they both get debuffed by agonizing visions, it's really easy to end up winning that team fight. And I think that's exactly what must have happened there for the Warriors. I think right around where the Sentry Ward is that Dardes just passed, bottom left mids. Looks like Sam and Panda Cat grouped up a little bit too much there, and the dive was fantastic from the Warriors.
Right, and you're thinking that fight is kind of over before it started. Hurrywin connects onto Dardes with that through space and time, and half healths him. Dardes drops down the Kraken, and it's had to be defensive on the Kraken usage a couple of times here, aggro, but I suppose we haven't talked about this Poseidon all that much. Maybe that's your goal at the end of the day here. If you're going to be getting dove on by a King Arthur, a Thanatos, a Xing Chen, maybe the best you can do is drop that Kraken, get some big knock-up cleave damage, and hope that's enough to disrupt the fight, and your team can win the rest.
It kind of has to be at this point. I mean, the way I look at it is that when you're playing either one of the backline characters, either the mage or the hunter, if the enemy team wants you dead, they will kill you. It is pretty binary in that way. These teams are coordinated enough. It doesn't matter how good your positioning is the vast majority of the time. If they want to commit enough, they'll kill you for it. It's a matter of forcing them to commit as much as humanly possible and then being able to punish them for it on the back end.
You hope that Dardes is able to get off a little more damage, a little more consistently. If you're the Oni Warriors, Neilma chunks about half of his health bar down. Cubo Fred lurking close by as well. Dragons collapsing on this right-hand side of the map. Oni Warriors in as a response as well. PBM's had some good whirlwinds of rages and steals. I don't know if that's how you pluralize that, but I'm going with the root onto Neilma. Up and down he goes through space and time. No good from Hurry Winter this time. Watch out, Sam for Soccer hovering death, and he's got one. Neil executed. The Dragons looking for more, but they maybe got all they want.
Love the patience from Sam, trusting in his brand new mid laner from Hurrowwind. He goes up and he goes, hey, anyone got anything for me here? Hurry hits him with the Unstable Vortex, and that puts Neil in execute range and gets the kill. But every single fight, it feels like Neil is the only one that ends up dying. And that's just not going to cut it come late game. The Dragons have got to find a way to get a little bit more, and the Warriors have done a very good job at spacing in these team fights. If they're going to commit a lot to Neil, you just can't get hit by the stuff that's hitting Neil. You can't get hit by the same Unstable Vortex. You can't get hit by that same hovering death. And Neil positions himself in a way where he knows that if they can commit onto him, but that his team's going to be able to reap the benefits on the back end. Don't think it's late game enough to really see that plan come to fruition quite yet. But if that continues to be the execution by the Jade Dragons, I really think that they could bait themselves into a bad spot if they keep committing onto Neil.
On another trend that has continued here, Aggro, still a 2-level lead for PandaCat. Now 3 as we stand over the Heimdall. So this power spike, that upgraded starter item is going to be hit a lot sooner for PandaCat here, just shy of 20 minutes into this game. First one to reach level 19, so could be the first to reach level 20 here as well. Devourer's Gauntlet, Executioner, Wind Demon as well, so opting for a little crit in his build here.
Love it. I think that this is, everyone kind of thought, oh, you know, crit got nerfed. It's not viable anymore. Guess I can't build crit. You can still build crit. It can still be really, really good. And we've seen it consistently from these Hunter players. Just having more objective DPS on things like Gold Fury and Fire Giant is so valuable that even though I still think Oboe might be just one of the best items in the whole game, period, if you can up your objective DPS significantly with something like the crit build, it's probably worth going. So I like both Hunters going for it.
Well, the Dragons have extended their leads. There's that small uptick about 16, 17 minutes into the game where the Warriors win that fight, but since then things have kind of spiraled right back downward. Jade Dragons find themselves now about 2,500 gold in the lead. 6,000 was in that experience department. PandaCat, first one of the game to reach level 20. A couple members of the Jade Dragons will be there shortly as well. And Aggro, it's been a quiet climb in the mid lane as well. Hurrywind, such a huge participant in some of these fights. Dardes feels maybe relegated to tossing out some of those Krakens and hoping he doesn't die. It's been a 2-level lead there in mid as well. So decent power spikes on the horizon for both of the carries of the Dragons.
Wow, we already have an Ornate Arrow just under the 21-minute mark. That is impressive. That's for PandaCat over here. And so now you've got his starter upgraded. Hurrowwind just needs to go back and get the gold in order to get his. I want to see the Jade Dragons fight now because there is a huge power difference. But I don't care if they've got Oracle Vision. I don't care at all about any of that. We have starter upgrade. They don't. Let's fight. And I think that the Jade Dragons should just be waiting for Sam to get here and then start pulling this Gold Fury because they just have so much more power centered around their Hunter. You don't want to just wait until the enemy team can start getting their upgrades as well. You've got yours now. Leverage it.
Well, I imagine we're going to see that here shortly. Cubo Fred dumps over onto Hurrywin, and Hurrywin has to use his beads to stay alive here. So now the Giannis maybe a little more susceptible. That's a chunky axe that Cubo Fred just caught there as well, especially with a little of the tankiness bruisery on this Loki. Plenty of ward coverage, as Doug is pointing out here for us. Jade Dragons are going to force the Oni Warriors right on back. PandaCat deep in the fray here with the rest of his team. Polar Bear Mike eats just a little bit of damage. Dragons playing this one slow. It's half HP on the objective as they've backed away. Neil, you can tell, itching ready to go here on a fight, looking for a dunk into the backline, but instead it's FineOK. Are you kidding me? The way this fight has started off for the Dragons, both backliners having to lead, but FineOK has been left alone. Sam for Soccer finds the stun, but no kill just yet. Dardes drops down the Kraken, melts down the health bar of the King Arthur. Nika falls elsewhere in the rest of this fight. 2 for 1 so far. Dragons continue the chase.
And Cuvo left up the creek, and it doesn't look like he has a paddle, but maybe he does. Mike gonna try and get in there. Good use of that 3 for the knock-up immunity, but Vote gets gobbled up by Panda Cat's crit. It's a 3 for 1 for the Jade Dragons, and they were just waiting to spring the trap. So they don't pull the Oni Fury right away like I was asking for, but it's because FineOK knew that he was going to hit 20 before Nika. So FineOK and Nika are both proxying on the right-hand side. They both back to come to the Gold Fury, but FineOK has Bluestone Brooch, and Nika does not. So now you've got 2 members of your team that are significantly stronger than their counterparts. And then it's just FineOK going, I'll just wait until I can get enough people hit with this initial initiation to buy enough time. Hurwin's through space and time nearly hits multiple people, but even still provides excellent portals to get in and out. Sam might be getting one shot, but he's doing some one-shotting of his own.
Right.
That's the Assassin's job come late game, is just take out a priority target. They do that with Dardes, and now the Jade Dragons are in a great position. It's the best time to get Oni Fury because you're coming up off a respawn. You can start shoving those waves and go right to the Fire Giant and force someone on the Oni Warriors to answer each and every lane before they can come and handle you on the FG. Definitely want to see the Jade Dragons keep up this pace. Maybe just waiting for Hurwin's beads to come up. That would be the thing that I'd be waiting for. But other than that, I think that they should keep up this pace.
Absolutely. 3 out of 5 members of the Jade Dragons now have their starter items upgraded. At least 2 out of 5 eligible for the Oni Warriors once the gold fuses into their pockets. But hovering by the Fire Giant is absolutely where the Jade Dragons will start to rotate here. Hurrywin seamlessly slotting into this team, it feels like so far, and the Jade Dragons feeling confident enough to start the FG, and it is melting. Neil is close by. He's going to get silenced, have to back away. FineOK connects with the ultimate. Jade Dragons nearly get it stolen away, but the Dragons have secured the FG. It's a double stun on the backline. Execute over onto Nika. FineOK gets one onto Dardes as well, and now Neil trying to retreat. The pillar from Panda Cat is inch perfect. Down goes Neil, down goes the FG. Dragons ahead.
Man, it just feels like hubris, doesn't it? Letting Hurwin get Giannis. Like, it, I don't know how they, how does it keep happening? I don't know. I don't know how it keeps happening. Another perfect through space and time. It hits 2 people, puts one in execute range. Sam cleans up, and you're seeing the difference in something like the crit build versus the pen build. Panicat comes in with Deathbringer to that Fire Giant and absolutely shreds it. That pressure, perfect by the Jade Dragons.
Seems like this might just be game over, and it sure is. Now that vote has fallen in 25 minutes. Jade Dragons dismantle the Oni Warriors in game number 1. The Titan will go down.
Beautiful work by the Jade Dragons. I mean, they just had so many great team fights over and over and over again. I think that obviously everyone's going to be talking about Hurwin for good reason, but FineOK had a phenomenal game there. He just created so much space for the entirety of the Jade Dragons, who was supposed to get on top of Hurwin. And only once did Panda Cat end up dying in one of those mid-game team fights. It just felt like the Jade Dragons were the ones doing all the poking and prodding, seeing what they could get away with. And the Oni Warriors, the first 15 minutes or so, responded beautifully. Ended up answering perfectly every single time. But then enough pokes, and eventually they found a crack and really exploited it. Really impressive game from the Dragons.
Feels kind of opposite, doesn't it? Where normally we're seeing, all right, you got this one big skill shot, burst, mage ability. Let's see what can set up for that in these fights. It's kind of the opposite. Hurrywin setting up for the jungle to find these executes all game long. Jade Dragons come out swinging to start off their Season 8. They're up 1 over the Warriors. Game 2 right after this.
Well, it's a big win for the Dragons there in game number 1, Mifflin, and you kind of heard Aggro saying it there towards the tail end. I think the real big thing there is that the Jade Dragons were kind of the aggressors the entire time. The Warriors had some pushbacks, some responses. Those are certainly there, but it kind of felt like the Dragons were the one asking questions, looking for purple buff invades, constantly forcing these fights. What was your read on this one, though? Was it as simple as Hurwin's real good at Giannis?
Well, most times Hurwin's playing the game, it is that simple, but I think there's a little bit more nuance this time around.
Yes, agreed.
And I think, in large part, I think it is junglers. Oni Warriors, Kubo Fred, really had a hard time getting involved on that Loki here. By the time he had got his Bruiser build going, already the Jade Dragons started to run away with neutral objectives as well as team fights. But I have to say it, you set me up, Finch. Hurwin on Giannis is just dirty. How many times did Sanford Soccer go up into the air and say, all right, Hurwin, I need you to hit this completely unreasonable snipe so I can find and execute, and Hurry just did it. I mean, you can't expect that from just about anyone else. No,
you can. Hurwin's been elevating Giannis' play for a long time now, but I think you do make a good point when you bring up just the difference in these junglers. I'm not trying to say Kubo Fred, kind of wasn't doing his work this game. I just think it was a case of the difference in when these picks were relevant. Sure, Thanatos is better now in the late game than he ever was before. I think that you're kind of misclicking if you're not picking this guy for what he does for the first 20 minutes of the game, and Sam put that on display. Hurwin was great in this one as well. And even Fine, okay, getting to get involved a little bit, having some value for him. A great game all around here for the Dragons. And so then, Miff, what's your diagnosis for the Oni Warriors? Is this a case of where you have to rebuild this draft from the bottom up, or more about the execution when they actually got onto the play field?
I think it might be a little bit of the draft. I want them playing something that come online a little bit earlier. That's kind of been the strategy to deal with Ghost Gaming in the past. Now Jade Dragons is, all right, if they're going to roll over us in the early, we got to put up our resistance there, or we need to really double down on our strategy of we got to wait it out till late game, hunker down, and then beat them there. That's how PK was able to do it at Worlds Finals last year, or this year rather. So maybe we see Oni Warriors take one of those two ideologies. Either blast them, bring your guns to the early game, or just wait it out.
They'll need to find a way to do one of those two because, as you said, that's kind of the modus operandi for this Jade Dragons team. And the crazy thing about it is they'll also just happily, if you force them to, beat you 35 minutes into the game as well. It's just that, generally speaking, they're pretty good at doing it early. It's just if it comes up, yeah, our late game's pretty good too. Just doesn't usually end up mattering in this one. So maybe some adjustments here in this draft. I don't know if you have to do away with the Loki entirely, but maybe put some support around him, right, so it's a little bit easier for him to make it to that late game. I think it was kind of there. Normally, Bacchus and Heimdall are not early game strugglers, but I think they kind of ended up struggling in the duo lane this time. We'll see what those adjustments are, though. Let's go ahead and hop into these picks and bans here, Mifflin. What do you want to see?
More of the same if you're the Jade Dragons, and a little bit of a different look from the Oni Warriors. Potentially even just go ahead and ban out that Giannis, right? I mean, Hurwin really is just elevating his teams with that pick. So I think Oni Warriors might have to keep an eye on it.
But weren't there bans game one Amir and Athena Yamoja? I mean, you kind of gotta ban those. So that's the awful position that this team can put you in. Sometimes what they do is they play these unique picks so well that there doesn't leave room for you to try and get in there. But maybe they have a chance. It's Amir, Athena now, Yamoja off on that other side. And we're at a point where Persephone's not an option for these teams. Oh, that's right. I misremembered. Sorry, guys. It was Tiamat, Athena, Ymir. Also kind of a must ban.
Yeah, all these bans making sense just for the meta. And Jade Dragons aren't looking shook at all. They're like, all right, yep, just another day at the office. Nah, they didn't ban out your Giannis Hurwin, so you can maybe just go ahead and lock that one in. Yet again, Oni Warriors in the first pick position might be able to get something of value here. Gods like Apollo still available, Guan Yu as well. And it looks like it is going to be a run back of that Guan Yu, one of the best picks in Season 8.
Yeah, and he did lose some pressure to the King Arthur on the other side for Fine OK last game. Want to see if he's got something planned to make things a little bit easier over there. That is scary. The exact thing that was able to get at least a little bit ahead is being locked in right away on that side for the Dragons. In the last game, they waited to the third pick to pick up the Giannis for Jade Dragon. So if they don't feel like there's any pressure, the Warriors might steal it away and take it for Dardes. Then yeah, this is essentially the same way. King Arthur on her, and it was Giannis right behind that. They can go right back to the same strat.
I think they can, but the Oni Warriors can now maybe make an adjustment. Maybe Dardes decides to take Yanis for himself, which is kind of crazy to say that you want to throw a pick towards Yanis as just something to get rid of, something that Hurriewin's able to do, but instead the Oni Warriors immediately going back to that Loki, kind of feeling like we're all the way back in Game 1. Had King Arthur been picked second, I may be calling out production, but instead the Oni Warriors are the ones looking for the run back.
Oh, but this is the adjustment. This is Dardez's perhaps signature pick in the Morrigan. If he's able to lock this in, and he is, then I think this truly could be considered something that you just got to be looked out for. He was on the Poseidon last time. They kind of waited a bit on his pick. Get him to Morrigan, and my man could take over a game.
He can, but still, the Oni Warriors are looking at the same issues that they were in Game 1. They don't have any tools to make it easy to transition into the mid-game. They don't have anything that's going to alleviate some of that pressure. If anything, the Morrigan is going to struggle a lot more just keeping up in wave clear and just getting levels under her belt. So expect the Oni Warriors to take something here, perhaps a little bit more aggression out of their duo lane to try and match what this On Her is able to do.
Yeah, perhaps aim something to the jungle, but are you banning Thanatos or Xing Chen? Well, if you're the Dragons, you are. A little bit of respect towards their own selection by getting that one banned away. And so now, if you're the Oni Warriors, maybe just stick with what you did before. They banned away the Cerberus and the Fenrir in this spot, and maybe they're trying to make sure they limit Mike. That was my read on it, the same way they did before.
Yeah, it seems like both teams are fine with throwing away some support bans, rather. Mike still hasn't selected his own, but he's got a pretty deep god pool. Fenrir is going to be the last ban for the Oni Warriors. Yeah, we don't want Mike looking comfortable at all, but there still are a lot of really good supports available on the board. Kepri is one of the standouts for me, as well as Geb, who's seen a little bit of a resurgence in Season 8. Instead, though, it's Artio locked in. Mike's looking to get aggressive, man.
Yeah, I mean, he had to go somewhere, right? There are 8 Guardian boards on the Guardian bands on the board right now. It doesn't leave a whole lot left, but this Artio is definitely something that we've seen him play before. Something that gives him, as you tried to allude to just now and did allude to, is that it's a bit scrappy, that can use that root and the ability to sort of limit the mobility on the other side to lock down some of these targets. Helpful against this Bacchus. And now in Chernobog here for the Oni Warriors. They end up with a pretty nice draft here. I know you didn't maybe feel completely sold that this Morrigan changes the pace of the game for the Warriors, but now just see this whole draft from holistically, do you think they have a chance to kind of shake up the pace that was their last game?
With Chernobog being added into the fray, I think that this Morrigan just got a pretty big boost to her viability inside the early game. The second she takes over to level 5, all of a sudden Jade Dragons have to be worried about being just outnumbered everywhere. If they decide to fight in the dual lane to try to alleviate the ability for Chernobog to rotate out, the Morrigan is also Chernobog. She can come over there in a heartbeat and make sure that every single fight has got a numbers advantage for the Oni Warriors. But even then, we saw it in Game 1. This Loki took a very long time to get his feet under him. It took a very long time before he was even confident enough to look towards any of these fights. I want to see him get involved a little bit earlier on, Cubo Fred that is, to try and match some of the pressure that Sam for Soccer was putting out. This time around, it looks like it could be an Osiris jungle, shades of Sino, but still the same level of pressure. I expect Sam for Soccer to be gunning it down from minute 1.
I expect so too, but this does seem a bit like those shades of Sino here doing his best cosplay with this Osiris in the jungle. If that's where this is going to end up, you certainly have to think so at this point, and give him the option to be a bit more aggressive in this game, sure, but kind of maybe even has to. Do you want to make it to the late game point where you don't have that more typical person who could do that big damage near the jungle? Cyrus certainly can go an attack speed sort of focused build and be a nuisance. That's just the outright truth, but maybe some trade-off here with this pick. So Myth, are you at the point now when you're willing to say that this looks like a 2-0 for the Jade Dragons, barring some big adjustment in-game for the Warriors, or maybe we get this one extended out a bit?
I think if the Warriors are able to extend this match to the 30-minute mark, I would still give them a slight edge here, especially considering how hard Osiris falls off come late game. Could have said the same thing about Thanatos, maybe to a little bit of a lesser extent. I really do think that the Oni Warriors have a draft that can work out, especially around their mid laner. This Morrigan is going to be one of the most important pieces that they need to move forward into the mid and late game. But Jade Dragons just look so dominant in the early game in Game 1. Gotta imagine the Oni Warriors have to hunker down and really try and weather the storm.
Yeah, and I worry a little bit about Mike here too, right? I mean, this Artio a good deal more vulnerable than the Xing Chen that he was on last game with a long duration CC ult with that 2-part leap he's got available. If Artio gets that dash interrupted by, I don't know, one of the many stuns that can come out from the Oni Warriors or anything like that, then suddenly she is dead in the water and vulnerable to what this Oni Warriors draft can do. And that's something Jade Dragons did well on the opposite side to the Oni Warriors. They punished Neil a lot in the early game. Now, or they have it set up here in a spot where Polar Bear Mike could be the one that potentially gets punished.
Yeah, I think Mike's going to have to play a little bit safe around the early, but still going to be harder to punish an RDO than it would have been to punish Neil last time around, that flop being really his only escape and engage tool. At least RDO can create a cripple field, stun around her feet, heal herself and her teammates, just matching maybe a little bit of sustain that Guan Yu's able to afford the Oni Dragons. It's going to be much, or the Oni Warriors rather. Oof, these new names get me mixed up. Jade Dragons, I think, have a composition that can certainly bring the fight in the early and in the mid, but if this does extend to past the 30-minute mark, I really do think Oni Warriors is going to walk away with it.
And does RDO kind of help enough here? Is a lot of this magical damage kind of falling onto Giannis? I'm worried about, well, we might not get a chance to talk about it. If we are ready to get in the game, only Dragons, Game 2, get down to Dave and Aggro.
Gonna need a big turnaround from the Oni Warriors here in Game 2, and it's still the Jade Dragons looking for maybe something early on in this game. Dolson, Aggro, and Doug bringing you game number 2 between the Oni Warriors and the Jade Dragons. Aggro, some might call it criminal that Hurriwind is able to pilot this Giannis yet again.
Yeah, I might. I might be one of those people, but I will say I'm not surprised. I mean, you look back to the PKE United set at Worlds last year, Neil and Fred did not ban Giannis from Hurriwind in that set, if memory serves. They've always been of the opinion that he's very good on it, but we can beat it. Didn't go so well that first game. We'll see if they can here. I do like their draft a little bit more. I think I preferred the Heim to the Chernobog with the way that the Jade Dragons team fought, but I don't think it's a massive difference between the two. I do really like the Morrigan switch up, though. I thought the Poseidon was just too easy to dive, too easy to go on. Yes, Dardas had some nice Krakens in order to get ready and punish, but giving him something with a little bit more flexibility makes sense to me.
Polar Bear Mike used his blink aggressively last time. He'll do the same here. He's reached level 2. Neil able to stun that onto Panda Cat, but more of the same, I think, from what we saw there in game number 1. Another big pivot, though. I mean, we still have the Giannis for the Jade Dragons, but so much of that follow-up and the kill pressure was Sanford Soccer on the Thanatos just dunking a half HP target in there for the execute. They switch up, the Jade Dragons do, to the Osiris here in this game. Does that pivot increase, decrease, change your preference on this draft at all? We'll see, though. If Final K can survive the onslaught, Nika's going to get ganked here by Sanford Soccer. A little extra damage rolls through, and Nika is going to dash his way away here. How aggressive did the Jade Dragons want to get? Nika's going to be able to sustain up with a few of those health bots. He'll survive underneath his tier 1 tower, but he's walked back out of range right into the sweeping shot of Final K. And it's the slowest first blood you'll ever see. Jade Dragons walk down the entire lane and just beat Nika to death.
It's just wave manipulation and using that Osiris consistent slow in order to get that kill. You were just asking about how this Osiris works. First of all, if for those who maybe only started following Sam for Soccer's career last year or the year before when he won the World Championship, he is a warrior jungle lover. He has always been a big fan of taking things like Osiris into the jungle. And I think Osiris jungle is actually very, very good. And it provides a lot of similar things to a lot of assassins, but he provides much more sustained DPS. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can build Osiris jungle. I think that you could go a little bit more auto-attack based like we saw from Sino last year. I think you can go a little bit more pen based and use those auto-attacks and just the long-range poke abilities to end up getting some significant damage off in team fights. But Sam can still follow up nicely off of Giannis ults. He can still stick on these targets pretty well, better than he could on the Thanatos, and he's got a ton more survivability. So I really like this decision to go with the Osiris jungle. I think it fits pretty well.
We're going to get a look at the longest first blood replay you'll maybe ever see. Final K does such a good job, Aggro, of baiting this, and then you get a good glimpse of the slow potential, kind of that perma-slow maybe, that the Osiris has on the back end of it. Does walk back into range there, but maybe just trying to sidestep out one of those final abilities, and It is FineOK who ends up getting that first blood there, Aggro, and that's pretty important. I mean, it took a little while for FineOK and Nika to rotate into those fights, get some serious impact, as most of the fighting was happening on the left with Hurrywind and Giannis and Sanford Soccer. But now giving FineOK that early kill is just going to give this King Arthur, a very scary King Arthur, an edge in that lane.
Felt like Fine and really the Jade Dragons, they spent a lot of last year playing around solo lane, but in game 1, it was all about duo. It was all about that duo pressure. And so many teams in Season 7 were playing that duo pressure style. That was their key win conditions. And it felt like the Jade Dragons were one of the teams that were playing the map a little bit differently. I'm curious if they've gone to this sort of style where a lot of teams are likely to play the same sort of way towards duo.
Uh-oh, Cuvo's here, and he's teleported behind Mike. Much quicker of a kill over here on the left-hand side through space and time. Clips Vote by the wings. Half of his HP is missing, but no follow-up to be had there. So now both junglers, Aggro, getting involved early in this game. Cuvo Fred, duo pressure, we're talking about it. Puts a little bit of it out. Goodness. Over onto the Jade Dragon side of the map. It's Polar Bear Mike who takes a fall.
And the main difference between Artio and Xingqian to me is that Artio's survivability is significantly less than that of Xingqian. Xingqian, I view as one of the hardest Guardians in the entire game to kill. So if he's going to be, if Mike's going to play that far up like he did on the Xingqian, it's a lot easier for him to get punished for it, and that's what we saw there.
Now there's another engage. My man Nika is just not having fun over in the solo lane. Dardes transforms into the Chernobog, joins the fray over on the right-hand side of the map. This is 4 members of the Jade Dragons backpedaling away from 3, but you're kiting into a Giannis who's able to cleave so much damage back through the Oni Warriors. Neilma up and over, but Sanford Soccer, he's got the follow-up, and hey, perfect segue onto the Scorpion here on the right.
Just worst case scenario for the Warriors. I mean, they just gave up so much farm in order to try and help Nika, who was dead long before the rest of the team got there. Just a mistake, I think, for not only Dardes to go over there, but for Vote too as well. That's rough.
Cuvo Fred is able to successfully invade the red buff here. Let's see if he pays for it with his life. The dash away will keep this Loki out of the fight for a little bit longer, so you're at least able to drop some experience, drop the red buff on the left-hand side. That'll keep Hurrywind out of that extra bit of buff territory for a little bit longer, and Dardes will be able to pick up his own red buff here. So small win now for the Oni Warriors, but a 3-level differential, Aggro. FineOK 201 on this King Arthur. Nika stuck at level 5, just the Warrior Tab Eye and the Star Item online. FineOK much further ahead along his build path. You gotta feel like the Jade Dragons are playing with house money at this point. FineOK can take these types of games over.
And when you look at the composition for the Oni Warriors, Loki is not really that early game burst damage character. Dardes takes some time to scale up. I mean, if he has his ultimate up, then he can become the best early game character on either team. But even then, there's not really a character that scares FineOK from this position. Fine is basically unkillable now, unless he dives a tower. That's really the only way that something goes wrong. I mean, here comes Cuvo Fred. They'll see if they can kill him, but I just don't think they can.
Yeah, time to check this. FineOK half HP. Nika uses the cavalry charge. And FineOK happy to just continue farming while Cuvo Fred is in his lane. So now Nika's half HP, same as FineOK, but there's no cavalry charge. So if there's any pressure on the right-hand side, Nika's got to be extra careful. Sanford Soccer collapsing on this purple buff. Last-minute attempt won't connect, but the axe, the sickle, I suppose, makes its way over onto Vote. We did see, though, Aggro, in that last fight, some of what the Oni Warriors were looking for, I think, in this draft. That double global collapse potential with Dardes transforming into Chernobog. If Vote had followed up, suddenly the entire team is over there in that lane. Maybe that's their route into this game, surprising the Jade Dragons at some point, but it's such a hard team to surprise.
And that's what I mean, where I'm saying that Fine is nearly unkillable. I just don't think 5 members are that scary to him because his energy generation is going to be so high. He's got great support from someone like an Artio. And so Jade Dragons, yeah, you kind of have to fight away from him if you're the Oni Warriors. I would be surprised to see the Jade Dragons keep up that duo pressure and not just... There's 2 trains of thought in a situation like this where, all right, we don't have to go over to the right side at all because FineOK is going to kill them without us. Or let's try and just keep feeding FineOK all of the extra farm. You know, let's try and make sure that Nika stays out of this game for as long as humanly possible. It doesn't seem like the Jade Dragons are that invested in keeping Nika out of the game. They let him get his next blue, which I'm a little bit surprised about. I think some of that is because of the good work that Fred did on invading speed and red. Knowing that they have those timers on the other side, it kind of disincentivizes you because you're losing 2 pretty valuable buffs in order to go for 1 buff that you'd split multiple ways. And it looks like the Jade Dragons are going with that first train of thought. Final K can handle 2 or 3 people potentially being on his side of the map. Let's try and use his lead to put additional pressure on this left-hand side of the map.
Plenty hard enough to kill now with the Stone of Gaia. Warrior Tabi instead of the reinforced Greaves, but you can see he's just cleaving damage through Cubo Fred. Jade Dragons are collapsing on the Oni Warriors purple buff here, and it is quickly dropped on down, and Mike will be able to walk in and pick that one up. Maybe it just makes sense here, Agra. That's now another purple buff that Mike has been able to secure. And so it's a 2-level lead for Panda Cat. We've been talking about this 3-level lead over for Final K in the solo lane. Panda Cat has built up a 2-level lead here, very similar to what we saw in game number 1. Remember, Panda Cat was the first one to reach level 20, got that upgraded starter item. Shades of that already starting to brew here in game 2.
And where do the Oni Warriors go to get back in this game? I mean, you look at their 3 lanes, you don't have pressure in duo, you certainly don't have pressure in solo, and sure, Dardas has a lead in mid, but are you going to be able to kill Giannis effectively? Likely not. So I just don't think that the Oni Warriors are going to try and speed up this pace at all because they don't have a lane to lean on. They're trying to just weather the storm. I like them letting Dardas solo red, doing things like that where you're getting as much neutral farm as you can, let Dardas continue to farm up, and hope that he can be the one to make a play for you in one of these side lanes, because right now Fred just won't be enough of an impact in either of the side lanes to really break the position that I think Jade Dragons are in.
Right. Well, then the neutral objectives become the question mark for the Jade Dragons. Pyromancer's going to be the one that's eyed and taken down right now. Still way too early for a Fire Giant. Scorpion still standing on the left-hand side of the map, so no Fury to be taken down just yet by the Jade Dragons. It's been a slow burn of a 3,000 gold lead that's now built up. Neilma, I imagine, slightly frustrated on a pick like this in the buckets. You want to be able to belly flop in and create as much havoc as you possibly can, and just has not had that opening or that opportunity just yet. Purple buff is going to respawn here in just a moment. Jade Dragons have loved invading in on those, so you have to imagine, Agra, there's going to be some type of collapse here, maybe a potential start to a team fight if the Jade Dragons are able to find it. Neil might get caught out here just around this corner. Vote is in as well. Hard-pressed to full-on fight over this purple buff, you'd think, but the Oni Warriors, they're starting to position themselves in an area where they might want to contest.
Fred coming around the back, really good idea to try and find that flank opportunity. I mean, this honestly isn't the worst fight the Warriors could take. Nice flop from Neil.
Yeah, it's big for Neil to engage on this fight, but there's no support on the back end. He eats all of that Desert Fury. Cubo Fred teleports over the wall, and now Hurrywind has to escape, but the Loki has met its mark, and it's gotten the kill. Now Dardas dunks on down, transforms into the Chernobog. Here's that global pressure. Look at Fine-OK. He's elsewhere, and that's why the Oni Warriors are feeling comfortable here. Mike stunned it down, but Sanford Soccer, full HP. Dardas has to use the Aegis, attempting to back away here. The stun will connect from Sam, but not quick enough. Cubo Fred on a killing spree. Massive swing for the Warriors.
Oh, and Mike just barely gets his back off. Fred nearly stopped it with that agonizing visions. Honestly, the Jade Dragons feel lucky to salvage a 2 for 3 in that position because Neil found such a good flop, and all this stealth from the Oni Warriors just makes it really hard to track where this fight is going to go. Mike did a great job of fending off multiple members, but you can't fend off a Chernobog. You can't fend off a Morrigan who can turn into a Chernobog because they're just going to jump in and end up getting over the top of you. They can just bypass you via their ultimates, and that's exactly what ends up happening for the Warriors. Fred gets in position in order to help ultimately as well, and then Hurwin just finds himself in a bad spot. You never want to be dead center of the lane as Giannis. I don't think he had his portal cooldown either way. Don't think it would have saved his life, but Fred did a good job getting on top of him in really punishing Hurwin quickly.
Hey, fight away from the King Arthur was the name of the game we said you might have to do, and the Oni Warriors take up that mantle. Still a 3-level lead for Fine-OK, but has been matched by Nika as the game has gone on. It has not gotten worse than a 3-level lead, and I bet that's the only thing the Oni Warriors are leaning on here, but feeling some confidence maybe after that small skirmish. Now, though, Aggro, the Scorpion has been taken down. That's a fight over a purple buff that the Oni Warriors were able to put forth there. And again, could have been better, could have been worse. A 3-for-2 trade is something I think the Oni Warriors will gladly take here. The Gold Fury, then, you have to imagine, becomes something the Oni Warriors are absolutely happy contesting, but I don't think that's something the Jade Dragons would let go without Final K rotating over as well.
Definitely the plan is to get Final K over here, because if that fight doesn't go our way, well, let's just bring over our strongest member on the map, and Nika's definitely not going to be able to make as much of a difference as Final K will be able to come these team fights.
Oh, a nice portal onto Neo. Hurrywind has it through space and time. Looks like it would kill Neil, but Hurrywind saving it for what is about to happen here. Through space and time, dodged out. Neil survives, but the support has to go back to base. That's going to open up the door to this Gold Fury, and nobody from the Warriors can get in range, and the Jade Dragons, they kind of fight beforehand. They don't get the kill, but they get the TKO, and the Warriors not able to contest.
And that's because of this pressure that Panda Cat still has on this left-hand side, despite that fight going well for the Oni Warriors around that last purple buff. Panda's still in control of this lane. This on her pick has really surprised me at how good it's looked at this level, at the SEC level. We saw it prioritized yesterday in the SPL. On her is definitely a hunter to keep your eyes on. I was coming in expecting a lot of Apollo, you know, potentially some Danza Burrow, but we haven't seen any real Danza respect quite yet. I'm not surprised to see the Churtabog, but to me, it's felt like On her might just be the premier hunter right now that we've seen. Him and Heimdall have impressed me quite a bit.
Barracuda loves that Apollo as well. The Bolts, remember, back in action later on today up against the Solar Scarab, so maybe some Apollo rears his head in our second and final matchup of the SPL day. But we've got a great one already brewing here between the Dragons and the Warriors. The Warriors finally showing some life in a small skirmish just a couple minutes ago, but the Dragons in the meantime able to secure the Gold Fury for themselves, keep that gold lead right about where it's at here. So a bit of a quieter game, though, at this point from the Giannis. It seems like the Warriors, at least in the first 15 minutes, have been able to survive the onslaught that Hurrywind had already had in place by this point there in game number 1. So if you're the Warriors aggro, I suppose you're not thrilled with the fact that this game is already at a 3-4K deficit, but this is what you can do. You can immediately collapse by sending everyone over onto Panda Cat, who has to use both actives. Mike keeps him in place, and Cubo, Fred, and Dardes are able to combine some damage to get the kill, but now Hurrywind is here through space and time, allows the mid laner to rejoin the fray. Sam for Soccer, no good on the axe, but he's got the stun waiting right around the side, and Cubo, Fred will get locked right into place, but he's got Sam for Soccer fighting inside of that poison. The damage just is not there until Hurrywind rejoins the fight, and down goes Cubo Fred, and it's a big up-down from Numa to keep things going.
Oh, Mike baiting Nika in. The Vine spawns the wrong time. Mike's going to be able to get the shell off, dash away. Vote gets cut up by Final K. The big boy has finally reached the team fight stage, and Jade Dragons have no intentions of letting it go. Yeah. Hey, Alec, we're losing over here. And here I come, baby. Coming right down the middle of Gold Fury Pit. You just cannot afford to go that deep. Yeah, they kill Panda Cat. Frankly, they shouldn't have. Panda, maybe not used to playing with the Yana specialist quite yet, goes to his longtime teammate Mike instead of just through the portal that Hurrywind had placed really perfectly for him by the tier 2 wall. Panda ends up falling, but he got all of his damage off. He did plenty to both Dardes and Vote. And I want to see a little bit more patience from them. They're going to double Chernabog dive. I don't see a whole lot of reason to both land at the same time. Let one of them force the jump from Panda, then the other lands, and then combos him because he doesn't have the jump at that point. I think they overlapped that just a little bit too much.
Here's Hurrywind, a replay from the Giannis. Yeah, he'll get it done from range. He'll get it done from point blank as well. Yeah, this is when the fight really ended, wasn't it? When Final K made his way into the fray of things there. Now 4-0-1 on the King Arthur, looking like he'll be the first to reach level 20. It could happen in sub 20 minutes. And yet again, aggro, the starter items then become this big conversation piece. He's got the Pestilence now, so a lot of the healing that might be getting done on any of those backliners, even the frontliners, Final K is going to be able to mitigate. But it really just feels, obviously, like you're completing just that one big extra item, but it's such a massive spike that, because it's that gap, right, that the other guy can't get yet. Right. It's an item lead that the other guy can't fill. And Final K is going to be able to take advantage here shortly. Hugo Fred with the heat check on the Panda Cat, but he'll survive for the time being with the ult right back in. Oh, Hurrywind in on the peel. Panda Cat takes the portal this time. Thank you very much, Hurrywind. says the Jade Dragons Hunter, but now Panda Cat being eyed by Vote, and Vote will at least able to make reparations, pick up a kill, but it's a double for the Giannis, and Hurrywind still alive, could be looking at 3. Got so much damage, triple kill for the Giannis. Wouldn't you guess it, you give it over, and you pay the price.
Unbelievable, man. He just keeps doing. You'd think it's, this guy just can't keep doing it to us, but here comes Tyler Whitney once again with the beautiful, near flawless Giannis play, man. Not only does he provide that portal, but slams with the unstable vortex coming through, provides another portal later on to get Vote out of the fight. Look, I mean, Hurrywind has been doing it on this pick for a long time, but now with this Jade Dragons team, you want to, this is kind of like, you look at a quarterback who hasn't had the wide receivers to get, he's made good plays, but the receivers haven't really gotten the job done. Kind of like the opposite of what the Bengals have dealt with for a long time, Dave, if you know anything about that. Now,
I don't, man, I don't.
You've got the quarterback, and all of a sudden he's got an all-pro wide receiver, an all-pro tight end, and a great offensive line. That's what I feel like Hurrywind has really walked into here with this Jade Dragon squad.
Yeah, Jamar Chase at 5, please, for my Bengals here this year. But we'll keep the NFL talk to this upcoming week. Hurrywind, an absolute masterclass. I imagine, though, that when my teammates start to lock this pick in, it'll look exactly like this. No skill cap on this god at all, right? I mean, this is about as easy as it gets to play a god like that. Obviously, I'm kidding. Such a high skill floor on a god like that, or skill ceiling, I suppose. I guess maybe both. Kind of connecting here. 5-1-2 for Hurrywind on the Giannis, affecting 7 out of the 11 kills. FineOK has reached level 20, first one in the game, and we are shy of 20 minutes. The dominance completely here for the Jade Dragons. The Fury went down just a minute ago, so now you're starting to eye maybe this Fire Giant side of the map aggro. Earlier on, the Warriors were okay with contesting a purple buff. If it's a Fire Giant started up here by the Dragons, maybe you contest if it's your last-ditch effort.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have great siege defense with this Warriors composition. I mean, I do think Loki is actually really good on siege defense because the agonizing vision is so annoying. In order to try and kill those Phoenixes, you just put it on top of the Hunter and they're in an awkward position, but I don't know, man. From this spot, yeah, fine, okay. Hey, welcome, Fred. Yeah, you're just toast. You just got no options.
Oh, man, same for Vote. Panda Cat and Mike, delete Vote off of the map. Sanford Soccer is going to continue the pressure on Tanika as well. FineOK lets out just a flurry of damage through space and time. Come on! Oh, no, that one doesn't connect onto Kibo Fred, but FineOK wants to continue the chase. Yeah, this guy's not very good at this pick, is he? Somebody who is good at the Giannis would absolutely have hit that, but look at what Hurrywind, Sanford Soccer, and the rest of the boys are doing on the right-hand side. They're just delaying Nika, trying to delay that back, but instead they've allowed time for Neil to close the gap onto Panda Cat. Dardes in, onto the stun. Aegis delays a lot of that damage. Panda Cat beads there as well. He'll leap out. He'll survive, but Cubo Fred collapses, and the Oni Warriors have found a pick.
Yeah, really good job there by Dardes. Just gets in there, no hesitation. Neil and the rest of the gang as well. Fred on top. You needed to get that one. It was a bit of a greedy play, I think, from Mike and Panda to try and push for that Phoenix. If Hurrywind did have through space and time, that fight could have worked out very well for the Jade Dragons because all of a sudden you've got FineOK coming through, and as soon as FineOK's there, it feels like the fight is over.
That's his fault, right?
In this game. Yeah, I mean, look, the man missed Cubo Fred by a well-trimmed beard hair. Like that it was that close, but it ends up being important because if they would have had that through space and time, maybe it goes a little bit differently. Either way, Jade Dragons are playing with their food a little bit at this point. They're in a position where they are very, very difficult to punish because I just still don't think anyone's truly got the damage to take out this King Arthur. Getting close, though. I mean, Vote now sitting on a short sword. He's working towards that Deathbringer. Once he has that, I think they actually might be able to kill fine. No spectral armor for him. Right,
it's all about having that uptime on your backliners at this point, and really Vote specifically. I agree with you there, Aggro. Vote's going to have to outpour a lot of this damage, so then it becomes Hurrywind with a well-placed set of abilities can delete the Oni Warriors backliner. Sanford Soccer under no real pressure from Cubo Fred here. Both teams just starting to set up the map here. Bluestone Brooch is Doug starts to highlight here. The completed star items starting to roll through now for the Jade Dragons. So yet again, very similar to Game 1. We have a situation, Aggro, where these completed starter items are there for 3 out of 5 members of the Jade Dragons and not there for anyone on the Oni Warriors. Are you kidding me? This is unfair! It's so unfair! Fine OK at 4:04 sends Hurrywin right on through the portal, and Tordes goes absolutely down. Sam can't believe it because the rest of his team is doing some serious work here. 6-1-2 on the Giannis. Easy as you like from the Jade Dragons.
You know what's so messed up about that play is that Dardes used beads and so came down earlier, and Hurry read it that he was going to have to beads that and then come down earlier because Dardes either spends the whole duration in Excalibur's Wrath and dies, or beads and lands in through space and time. Yeah, that's cool, and we all love that with your Dardes.
Oh my god.
Poor guy.
Fine OK is just decimating right now. He's alone with Neil and Nika while the rest of the team goes over to the Fire Giant and gets it for the Jade Dragons. This is methodical from this Jade Dragons team, not a team. And we can reference Season 7 because, again, 4 out of the 5 members were from that Ghost Rush. This is not a team that makes mistakes very often, if ever, in situations like these. Vote has both acted.
Come on, man. Give me a break, dude. What is that?
But look, but it's okay. But it's okay. We'll ban out some other gods, but the Giannis will make its way through for Hurrywin once again. We'll be able to deal with it here, no problem, in Game 2 to the tune of 7-1-2 on the Giannis for Hurrywin. 15k damage. We'll keep shouting out Fine OK as well. Everything's just connecting for Hurrywin right now. Sometimes you got to throw your hands up and just say he's playing better.
You know, so the storyline coming into this is that Mike has lost on nearly every single beginning set he's had in the SPL. At least the last 3 years that I can remember, he's lost. But counteracting to that, those last 2 losses, you know who he's lost to? It's been Hurrywin. Last year it was Hurrywin on E United, and the year before that it was Hurrywin on Dignitas. So is the tension between Mike losing every initial set and saying he's going to have his worst year ever, and Hurrywin, who wins his first set all the time and is looking like he might have his best year ever. Now we know definitively Tyler Whitney's just stronger than Mike Heiss. We've figured it out. Hurrywin's the main character.
This is the ultimate if you can't beat him, join him, right? I mean, it's been a lot of swaps of SSG and PK morphing with one another. Really, it's been beneath our noses the whole time, and it's just been PBM needing to team up with Hurrywin, I suppose.
Yep.
Well, the way things are looking here, that's a bet that is paying off for PBM and the rest of the Jade Dragons. Gold lead, I'll mention it, 13,000. Doesn't look great for the Oni Warriors here. 25 was the amount of minutes that Game 1 had in store, and it's looking like just above that is maybe what Game 2 has for us here. This one is a bit more of a decimation of the Oni Warriors. Game 1, there were some signs of life from this Warriors squad, but this one really just got taken over in the last 10, 15 minutes or so. Could get worse for Hugo Fred here. He's getting stunned down and effectively soloed by Dude, it's like horrifically bad commentary, but I just laugh every time because of course he hits it. He just shotguns Cubo Fred from everywhere and nearly gets the kill onto a hybrid build Loki. The hands have got to be just thrown up here for the Oni Warriors. Maybe this Phoenix defense is where things make some sense. It's a great engage from Neilman. Now Nika charging the backline. Uh-oh! Oni Warriors have found the opening kill here in this fight, but you got to deal with Hurrywin. He's alive in the backline. Does not have through space and time. Cubo Fred's low. Same with Dardes and Neilman. Nika going back to base. It's one pick. And that's maybe all the Oni Warriors can hope for.
And Panda just has to know that he's going to be the priority target because they know they can't really kill Hurrywin super effectively, even with through space and time on cooldown. And Panda's the one who's going to be able to kill these Phoenixes. Sure, Sam can do good damage. He's got a good amount of attack speed and that Bumba's Hammer passive now. But he's got to get melee range. Panda's going to be the target. And I think that he was just a little bit too far forward potentially. Or maybe the Jade Dragons as a whole just got surprised by the burst damage coming through from the Oni Warriors. But I like that they haven't given up, that they're standing strong and still throwing their hat in the ring, because now we're getting close. They can delay a little bit on this next FG. It becomes Enhanced Fire Giant. Doesn't take that many mistakes around an Enhanced Fire Giant to get it stolen. If it gets stolen, then you're back in the game, because there's a lot of gold on the map for the Oni Warriors to grab. They've got 2 Tier 2 towers and 2 Tier 1 towers worth of gold still sitting and waiting for them if they can get enough map control.
All right, there's a results tree here. It's wide, and there's a lot of results that end in the J Dragons winning, but there are a few results at the bottom of the tree if everything goes right for the Oni Warriors, where they can inch their way back into this game. But the Fire Giant that's going to be spawning here in just under a minute or so is going to be the most important one of the game. Maybe there's a world, aggro, where Dardes feels like he can transform into Hurrywind, attempt to steal. Maybe that's your avenue back into this game if you're not ready to full-on commit into something like this. I wonder if Nika is actually in a little bit more danger than he realizes. But no, J Dragon's playing this one slow, and they're going to usher the Oni Warriors in. Look at that ward coverage deep on the blue buff side of the jungle here for the Oni Warriors. There's not going to be any sneaking into the FG pit.
And this isn't too bad, because even though there's a fire wave still in left, Vote, he's playing Chernabog. He's got his ultimate. He can get over there really quickly. The thing that the Oni Warriors have to be ready for is that Panda Cat and Sam and Hurry's DPS on the fire is going to be significant. It looks like it's not a contest, which is an acceptable position, if you ask me. They just had fire, and we just killed them on Phoenix, so why not just do it again instead of taking a much less advantageous fight around this end, especially when there's that much ward vision. So I think that that's a fine decision by the Oni Warriors. But now you've got to say, all right, now we have to weather another storm, and then we have to win the next firefight. We're still probably 2 or 3 fights away, 3 fights most likely, from the Oni Warriors being in a position to win this game, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I couldn't have said that a little bit ago.
That's right. The fist shaking of aggro about Spectral Armor is finally paying off, though. FinoK's picked one up, as well as Nika, so these crit builds on the frontliners are going to be slightly less effective, and it's got to be the right avenue, right, where FinoK, up to this point in this game, feels like he could take about everyone down, and I think he damn well could have taken anyone on the map down. Now that the Spectral Armor decreased critical strike bonus damage by 60%, and with Vote so important, he was the one we said that needed to melt down FinoK. It's going to be a little bit more difficult now that FinoK is itemized the way he has. I
mean, look, FinoK was unkillable before, completely massive. Now, he and Nika are in nearly the same position. Nika, of course, still has boots, hasn't upgraded his starter, but Nika is going to be able to be an effective frontliner in this fight. This is definitely the closest fight they've taken between the two solo laners. Maybe this whole game. It really has been that dominant.
Everyone level 20 except for Neoma, but Neoma was able to upgrade that starter item, level 17, that mark for supports. Polar Bear Mike first through the door here, stuns down onto Neil. Hurrywind is going to be absolutely cleaving out damage from that backline there. Left side Phoenix, the eye here, his back and respawned, not full HP, but still low enough for Panda Cat to make quick work of it. Sanford Soccer is going to be the split here, 4-1 split with Dardes kind of working back and forth on either side. I'm interested to see, aggro, where Dardes transforms here. It's been this Chernabog, maybe it continues to be, but you don't need that same global pressure when you're fighting inside of your own base. Neoma, or Nika, excuse me, half of his HP is gone. Same could be said for Neil. Nearly all of Neil's HP is gone now.
Hurry!
But to re-engage, Dardes found double stun through space and time. Rare miss from Hurrywind here. It's the left side Phoenix being looked at. Save for Soccer, dunks down onto Dardes. Vote pouring out the damage. Oni Warriors are still alive.
Nice and patient from the Jade Dragons. They had a great engage. Look at the relic situation for the Oni Warriors. They are low in that department, but Vote has both of his and his ultimate. Vote's got to go big in this fight alongside Nika. Those two need to go off here.
The Phoenix has got to be your 5th man here if you're the Oni Warriors, because Dardes is 30 seconds away from providing reinforcements. Nika cavalry charge to get out of the portal, it looks like there. So the Guan Yu will stay alive, but the Guan Yu now cannot engage as effectively. J Dragons work their way in. Mid-Phoenix now gone. Methodical from this Dragon squad. Right side Phoenix, the last one standing.
And it looks like that's going to be for a later date. Instead, let's back up. All these buffs are up. Strip away the jungle. Go to the Primal Fury. And then you can reset and go for the enhanced Fire Giant with both mid and left side Phoenixes down. It's really tough because the Oni Warriors, they are really a composition that finds it very hard to engage on their Phoenix line because they're relying so much on stealth and on global mobility, as you highlighted, and neither of those are effective whenever everyone's staring at you. And I love the decision from Sam. So often we see these 4-1 splits, these 3-2 splits. Stealth and global mobility are better when we're split up. Don't try and split them up. Don't try and do any of that nonsense. Let's just group up and force a 5-on-5 I think that was very intelligent sieging by the Jade Dragons.
I giggle because the Oni Warriors are setting up a trap here, but it's fine. Okay, is the one that is potentially getting trapped out. Dardes, Kivo, Fred, Nika, Neilma, all here. Fine, okay. Oh, he's got a wave to catch, so he's not going to walk this far back into the jungle. For what it's worth, Aggro, I don't know if there's much more the Oni Warriors can be doing right now. This left side wave is pushed all the way back.
Here we go.
Voda's doing his best in the mid lane to push that out, so let's try to find a pick here, and it's Fine Okay that's now getting engaged on. It is Fine Okay who will get picked out. What a call from the Oni Warriors. Vote closes the gap. A full 5 dive is what it takes, but Fine Okay is now out of the fight for a full minute.
Smart, and this just delays what we could see the Jade Dragons do on this Fire Giant. And Fine Okay, understandably, uses his purification beads. You're trying to get out of there, but having those on cooldown for this firefight is relevant going into this engagement. So now you're in a position where all those ultimates you use, those will be back up. You don't have to worry too much about that. You've hard shoved your left wave, and now you've put the Jade Dragons on notice that that wave is kind of off limits in order to go out and shove just in case they're still there. So now you even up this Fire Giant fight, not significantly, but more than I thought they'd be able to. I love that play from the Oni Warriors. Very smart.
In the pregame interview, Hurrywin told us to expect kind of what you expect out of the mid lane. We expected to see Giannis. I didn't expect to see it twice, but here we are. Oni Warriors pulling the enhanced Fire Giant now. They've got the one-man advantage, and the Oni Warriors will complete the Fire Giant, but Hurrywind now with the through space and time has connected for some damage onto the backline. Sanford Soccer completes one of those kills onto Cubo. Fred a second onto Vote as well. Nika left running. Dardes will have to go back to base. Now PBM chasing down the solo laner for the Oni Warriors, and Nika will go down as well. They get the enhanced Fire Giant, but Sanford Soccer gets 3. Jade Dragons could be looking to end.
So what's the Dardes is going to turn into Hurrwind and was hunting for someone on speed, but not quite
but
the honest master that Hurwind is. Yeah, I like the last-ditch effort, hoping that they're going to try and gun down the speed buff and group up. But now it's Dardes versus the world, and I don't think Dardes is winning that. He just got locked out of his own house.
Yeah, this one's going to go on over to the Jade Dragons in 35 minutes. 7-1-7. Say his name. Hurrywin goes big in his debut with this Jade Dragons roster. I mean, literally everyone. Good luck to the post-game stats guys there, because 4-1-6 for Fine Okay, that feels good. 7-1-9 for Sanford Soccer. But Hurrywin's got to be the name that these guys highlight at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I like the call from the Warriors. I'm not sold on pulling the Fire Giant. I understand the thought process that we're probably not going to get a better fight than this. It's 5v4. But the concept of let's pull fire with the intention of doing it and then disengage from a Giannis is very, very hard to do. And I love the Osiris jungle pick got to pop off in the late game, because that's what its problem was previously, is that it didn't scale well into the late game, didn't have that late game potential. Bumba's Hammer fixes all of that for that character. You saw Sam go off in that team fight. You can thank Bumba's Hammer for it. It did a lot of work for him.
Felt like everyone on the Jade Dragons was getting triple kills at some point here in this one. Oni Warriors, if you're a fan of theirs, they showed signs of life today against what might arguably be the best team in this league. So something to build on absolutely for the future. Jade Dragons Season 8 debut goes flawlessly, 2-0 over the Oni Warriors. That's it for Aggro and I on the cast. Quick break. The desk will break the rest down.
Well, it's a big win for the Jade Dragons here, Myth. They continue to be impressive, picking up pretty close to right where they left off last year here over the Warriors. There's indeed Finch and Myth here. And Myth, this one was, I don't know, maybe a little bit more in doubt earlier on, but for a lot of the late game, they were so far ahead that it seemed difficult for the Warriors to get back into it. What was your read on this one, on why the Dragons were able to be so dominant yet again?
Well, Hurrywin was playing Yanis again. That has been a common thread so far in the set. And he kind of hits, like, every single snipe. I hope that it's all Hurrywin here, man. I don't want to see anyone else because that's how dominant he was. But let's give some shout-outs to Final K, as we always have to do, because he's also that good. But new guy Hurrywin, man, does it all for his team.
Yeah, they really are starting to become this scary Voltron already. One game into the season, I'm ready to proclaim them the greats. Maybe a little bit ahead of myself, but what makes this team so scary is that what Hurrywin did this set, literally any one of them, that's nasty, literally any one of them could do anytime, right? Like, it could be Sam doing this to someone next week, and maybe Hurrywin takes the day off, and then Mike the next week, and then Panda Cat, and then Fine, and just on and on and on like that, because that's how talented each one of these guys are. And it was a really, really tough performance for them. Final K even coming back to clean up what should have been first blood for Nika. Unlucky there are no man fights here. There is no honor. You got 2v1'd. Unlucky. That's just the case here, man.
So fast. you said it all so fast, Finch. I got whiplash trying to listen, man. But you're absolutely right. Final K lost that 1v. Okay, yeah. Hurrywin. Gotta get a little celebratory dance in. Look, let the rest of the SPL be put on notice. Hurrywin said in his interview, I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing, and it's going to work. Clearly, he was not lying, guys. Come on, force him to expand that God pool ever so slightly. 7-1-7 is the slash line for Jade Dragon's mid laner, also breaking the PBM curse and winning themselves the first set of the year. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, 5K ahead of the next highest person in damage. A lot of what was going on was Hurrywin. Sam also made the Osiris look great, had a couple of people that he picked off on their own and shredded them. I, of course, immediately tried to pay homage and beg for forgiveness for doubting it for even a moment in Sam's hands that it would look this good. I mean, listen, the Jade Dragons, I think we knew all along this team was going to be good. Oni Warriors, when they're here, we have to remember they're not all here. They have not all relocated. They're dealing with some tough ping. And perhaps they will start banning Honest later on. I think this is going to be a pretty big rivalry between these two teams. It just did not happen here in this very first set. No reason to discount the Warriors, I don't think, going forward until we can really see them at their best.
Yeah, I think I'm not speaking alone. I'm not trying to put words in these other casters' mouths, but I think if you were to evaluate all of our power rankings, we've got the Jade Dragons pretty close to the top, if not all at the top. There is nothing wrong with falling early on to them. Oni Warriors certainly a team. They're going to bring it to all the rest of the competition. Just keep your eyes on them.
Yeah, I expect so. The next game that we'll be having up, that's the Bolts versus the Scarabs, another match that I expect to be a really, really close one. So make sure to stick around for that one. Jade Dragons have another matchup against the Kings, who shocked the Titans and the world back at that very first set of Season 8 by beating them in a convincing 2-0. It did not look like some sort of fluke, so I'm really excited to see them get what is the ultimate test. Though, of course, as we just said here, for the Warriors, if they do drop that set to the Dragons, don't feel bad. I expect most people will be during the regular season, so no reason to take that L personally. Though, of course, we have one of the Dragons standing by here with us. It's Sam for Soccer here for the interview.
That's right, Sam for Soccer jungler and Demon Slayer fan. Sam for Soccer joins me from the Jade Dragons. Sam for Soccer, incredible start to the season for you guys. Quick 2-0 over the Warriors. 35 minutes in game number 2, so a little bit longer there. I want to touch on you first. Thanatos in game 1, Osiris in game 2. Both looked pretty incredible for you guys. Obviously feeling comfortable in that jungle. Is the meta in a spot, do you think, where Warrior, Assassin, hell, even Athena can kind of work? Do you think it's in a pretty versatile spot right now?
Yeah, I think definitely you kind of have a lot of options for sure. I think that maybe people are leaning more towards like bruisery gods and assassins or whatever, but yeah, I think you can kind of do full damage, full maybe not full tank, but like get some bruiser items in there or whatever. You kind of do whatever you're feeling, however you want to fit into with your team.
Well, you were feeling good, and so you did good, it seems like, here in this set. I'll get run out of town if I don't ask about Hurrywin a couple of times here. Yeah. Gets the Giannis in back-to-back games. Talk to me a little bit about how communication changes, how strategy changes with a god like Giannis, right? I mean, lots of portals to discuss over through space and time opens up a lot of fights. Is that kind of when communication is at its most important when you're playing with a god like Giannis that makes this fighting so chaotic sometimes?
Yeah, I think it definitely makes can make or break like a good Giannis or a good team at playing with it, because like you can really play around the portals as well as possible, and if you're not like calming where they are or whatever, then it's pretty hard to be in them instantly or anything like that, or play off like I think Hurry got a snipe off of like a Arthur ult, something like that. Like Calm's just coming to play for that, so to make those plays happen, it's pretty important. Yeah.
Yeah, top tier Giannis for sure. I think he missed like 1 or 2 snipes. Aggro and I bagged on him a little bit for that one. Yeah, rough day for Hurrywin. You guys are back in action. Final thoughts here, Sam. You're back in action against the Kings tomorrow, a team that we thought would take a little bit of time to wind up. What's your take on your opponents for tomorrow and how you feel in confidence-wise?
They definitely look pretty good against the Titans. I think we're feeling confident either way. I think like against like this team and other teams that have a few players in Europe still, like you kind of take the games with a grain of salt a little, because everybody's not like on the best ping and things like that. But I think we're feeling pretty confident, and we'll be expecting to take the win for sure.
Well, Sam, 1-0 to start off Season 8. Congrats to you and the rest of the Dragons. We'll see you tomorrow to start off the day up against the Kings. Everyone at home, stick around. We got the Bolts versus the Scarabs up next.
times has this happened to you? Tired of chairs that don't have your back? Now there's a better way. Introducing the SMITE Maxonomic Chair, perfect for any occasion. Sitting, conversation starter. Sitting, game night with friends. Sitting, high-powered business meetings. Sitting, standing, sitting. Maxonomic chairs are complete with full positional settings, height adjustment, and rotation settings. There's no wrong way to sit, as long as it's Maxonomic.
I'm Maxine Nomic, owner and operator of Maxonomic. Trust me, we've got your back.
Maxonomic is a paid ad and cannot be trusted. Don't delay. Order your customizable Maxonomic chair today. Rest assured, this chair has your name on it. Operators are not standing by.
That's right, the Maxonomic chair, and it's my first chair out of the year, so I'm starting things off casually. And we're gonna slowly turn around. The Maxonomic chair, a throne fit for royalty, and Ramsey is certainly royalty here in this league. Needforseat.com is where you can get this chair. Dog, look, it's so comfortable she's about to fall asleep. Miff, maybe you just do this whole desk with Ramsey next to you, right? She actually fits right into the 2-box. Very, very well there. But thanks to Maxonomic, our chair sponsor here at the SPL, needforseat.com. Go online, check it out. They're comfortable. Ramsey's about to fall asleep in this one. Unfortunately, I cannot allow you to do that, dog. I'm going to have to take a seat here at some point.
Dare.
You can sit with me,
no,
though. You can,
no.
It's bring your daughter to work day. I'll sit with the dog, Mifflin. Oh,
okay,
God. Oh, this is chaos. There we go. I dropped a pine cone on the ground. She won't be happy about that. But look, Miff, we had a pretty lopsided set there for our first set of the day. Jade Dragons versus the Oni Warriors. Up next, though, I think another pretty sneakily anticipated matchup. A team in the Bolts, obviously fan favorites on that roster. But then the Solar Scarabs, a team that obviously has a lot of fanfare behind it, a lot of fan favorites on that team as well. And this is the big heat check for this roster.
Man, you stole the words from my mouth. I was so excited to say heat check about both of these teams, really, especially considering how the Bolts looked in that last set. But you're absolutely right. Both of these squads have got some pretty strange expectations around them. Solar Scarabs kind of, I think, the spiritual successor to Obey last year, but this time with some very new looks. A lot of rookies coming through. Layers and Moronic first time in the SPL, jungle and mid combo. Some of the most important pieces on the map. I think they've got a lot of proof for the SPL fans at home. And the Bolts, after kind of getting blown out a little bit by the Leviathans, need to get that taste out of their mouth a little bit and prove that they're a real competitor in the league. Now's a good time to prove it.
Well, realistically, how concerned are you about this Bolts team after what you saw yesterday? I mean, they kept their roster mostly the same, right? I mean, it's 4 out of the 5 guys from that Renegades roster last year. They throw Haddix over there into solo lane, and Haddix actually looked really, really good, I think. So what's your level of concern after, granted, just one game for this Bolts team?
I think that the Bolts are going to look as good as the Renegades did last year. And if you remember the Renegades last year, when they were playing to win, they looked like an incredibly strong team, but they had a propensity at times to play to not lose. It felt like at times they were just trying to extend the match rather than further their own goals. If they don't fall into those trappings and they keep up what they were able to perform to at Worlds, I think that this is a squad that can really, really turn some heads. But as of right now, they're looking a little shaky.
And I'm wondering where Barracuda starts to go today with some of his god picks. The Apollo, at times yesterday, looked good, but we didn't quite see the same global, chaotic impact that it brought to the Season 7 World Championship. I think this guy, if he continues to step up, not this guy, he did step up. Love Venenu with everything in my heart and soul. But Haddix, if he continues to step up, that's going to be a big boon here for this team. Having someone alongside Jake, especially if you get like the tier pick alongside like a Sobek. Normally it was just Jake running around with the tier. If you can get somebody in Haddix who likes to do that as well, you're maybe going to have one of the more aggressive teams here in this league. Speaking of Venenu here, Mifflin, what were your thoughts on the mid laner's debut here in Season 8?
I think Ven looked good, but it's hard to say, right? When the whole team is struggling, of course, every individual piece is going to look worse than they could look. I think Ven fits into his squad very well. It looked like he was really meshing well with Lazar. There was a couple gank attempts in mid that kind of went well for them, but that Kronos game, man, it's really jumping to the forefront of my mind, and it's hard to think of anything else, right?
Right, you got to think of the pick and maybe not the player. I don't know. He certainly has some room to grow here, and that's why this matchup, I think, is so important for Venenu and the Bolts team. We were able to sit down with Venenu. Here's some of his thoughts going into this matchup.
All right, I am here with Venenu mid laner for the Bolts. And then first thing I want to talk to you guys about is, we already talked a little bit before about, this roster kind of coming together. I think you all really improved objectively towards the end of Season 7, right? What are you all doing to try and hold on to that momentum and kind of keep showing us that improvement you guys had last year?
This year we kind of just like, on our off season, we kind of just all were grinding the game a lot, always keeping up on our mechanics and everything like that, making sure everyone's on the same page. We were lucky enough to get a team house early on. So we got everybody in the team house really early and built like a team synergy outside of the game, and made sure everybody's like comfortable, especially Haddock, bringing in the new person. Want to make sure he's okay with everybody and happy and comfortable with whatever he wants to say and do and bring to the team and everything like that. So we've been working with him really well. Rose been helping him get used to everything and like the difference between SCC and SPL and what you need to focus on and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think you guys have anything to worry about with Haddox in terms of talent, right? Just maybe
I agree.
Getting him a little bit used to it. So I'm right there with you, man. Your first opponents, or your opponents next, rather, are going to be the Scarabs. And this is a team that we don't exactly know how they're going to play. They've got a lot of new members here on this roster. What are your expectations for this team, and are you guys going to do anything different than you normally would?
We're going to prep the same way as we do every team. We don't like to underestimate any team just because of like what everybody else thinks and stuff like that. We always make sure that we've done our prep and we're ready to go. We definitely need to be careful of, I feel like, maybe some like janky strats that they might have come up with. It's the beginning of the year, so technically anything goes at this point, so we just have to be ready for different starts and everything like that. But I think we're pretty comfortable with the current starts that we have, and like what we think the meta is. I think we're pretty solidified on it. And yeah, and they have obviously new players coming into the league with Layers and Baronic, so we'll definitely see how they go. I've seen Layers grind a lot, so I'm expecting to see a bit from him. I haven't seen Baronic too much, but yeah, I'm excited to see what they bring.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that game. It's their first test, and we get to see once more how you guys are looking. Thanks then, Ben, for taking some time to talk to me.
Problem.
Good luck in your first match, or your second match here coming up.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Always a good, soft-spoken confidence, I think, there from Venenu. And as we pivot our discussion over to the Solar Scarabs, I think we can kind of pick up right where Venenu had things, is that, look, you got some very recognizable names on this team, but who knows how they're going to end up performing. Mifflin, maybe you have kind of a vested interest. A bunch of these guys come over from console. Notably, they're kind of core there between Layers, Baronic, Inbound obviously in the SPL last year, but a couple newcomers to the year this year in Layers and Baronic. What's your initial take on the Scarabs roster, and how do you like their matchup against the Bolts?
Not often I get to lean on my SCL experience, Dave, so I'm pretty excited.
We don't want to lean on your SPL experience, right? Like the
God, shut up, Dave. Shut up. All right, so anyway, here's the thing about how these boys have been playing together for a long time. They certainly have. I really think that Inbound, Baronic, and Layers are going to be the core of this squad. They've always been connected at the hip at every LAN I've ever seen them at, and they are incredibly talented at working together. The communication, I think, is going to be very key for these three players. And what better three players to have communicating properly than your support, your mid laner, and your jungler? It's going to be a team identity, I think, for the Scarabs to play around these three, and with veteran leadership from Zapman, from guys like SOT, who you can expect to hold their own in lane, I think that this is going to be a squad that can really do a lot.
Well, it's actually kind of like a correct visual, right? Where like the 3v3 of this team, need to be built up, high potential for this squad, and then on the outsides of that, on the right and far left side of the map, you got these veteran SPL talents that'll kind of be helping them along the way. It's kind of an apt visual, I think, for the way that this team is built. Zapman, I'm interested to see how his year goes this year. Obviously, defending world champion back-to-back, world champion
two-time
Zapman, two-time. That's right, two-time back-to-back. 1993. No, that was somebody else entirely. But Zapman, look, you wonder if he comes into this year with something to prove. But he's definitely got a new team, and he's got to be the core, along with SOT, of that veteran leadership.
Yeah, I think he certainly will be as well. Zapman is a guy who, if you were to track his entire career, every single team he's been on has got a similar playstyle. Zapman has always been at the helm of his squads. He's been a real dictator on the P's and B's as well as the play on field. So I think, if anything, he's a player in particular that is used to picking up new talent and kind of shining them and making sure that they're able to be the best versions of themselves.
We talk about Zapman, and it's pretty fitting we were able to talk to Zapman as well prior to this big matchup. Let's hear what the veteran talent of the Solar Scarabs has to say.
I am here with Zapman ADC for the Solar Scarabs, and I feel like I got to put two-time defending world champion on there, almost like doctor when you earn a doctorate or something like that. Zapman, talk to me a little bit about this new roster, because obviously things are going to be a little bit different here for you guys. You know, you've got Layers and Baronic on that team in particular. I think kind of standout new players here for you guys. Talk to me a little bit about how y'all have been meshing and your expectations for them as well.
Yeah, you know, I didn't know what to expect when I first got on this roster. I haven't played with pretty much any of these guys before. Sorry, just my dog's being a menace. And what's it called? So I didn't know what to expect, but I have a lot of experience with new teams. I've been on many different teams, you know, through my 9 years of SMITE. And, you know, when we first got into our first scrim session, I was very, very impressed. A lot of the guys kind of just wanted to listen to what I had to say and, you know, really wanted to work hard and try to get good as a team. So as far as I would say, you know, mentally, the team has what it takes to win. Also, you know, as we played more games, their mechanical skill became apparent to me. So I have very high expectations for my team. And it's also very motivating to play on a brand new team because I know there's a lot of work to do. You know, there's a sense of complacency when you win a Worlds and then you go maybe win another Worlds. And if we would have been on the same team again, there might have been a lot of complacency, you know, on that team. So it's definitely exciting to be on a new team and very motivating.
Well, not a lot of people get to deal with that complacency, Zap. Y'all are in rarefied air, I'd say. But your opponent's coming up. Then you guys are going to be playing the Bolts here in this match as kind of your very first test. And this is a strong team, largely the same from last year, and it was a team that was improving. Have you all done any kind of adjustments in the way that you're prepping for this team, or are you all going in there business as normal?
Bolts, they did well in the I would just say in the playoffs, right, or in the Worlds, right? Yeah. They didn't really do well in the regular season. They're a very smork team. You know, they play this one style where all they do is invade purple, and if that doesn't work, they fold over, which is very apparent in the Ghost set. Also, we scrimmed them a lot last year, so we knew what they were going to do. I don't expect anything different. I feel like this team's identity is very straightforward. I don't think there's any secrets with this team. They literally will run at your purple. If that doesn't work, they lose. If it does work, they might win. So we definitely have that in mind when we're prepping for our games. And we're also expecting some kind of maybe invades, some kind of, you know, invade strats that they like to do. So, you know, we'll be watching our red, we'll be watching our purple, we'll be watching our everything, you know, when we go against them. So should be a good match.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, man, Zap. You got me excited to see this team as well. Thank you, as always, for giving me a little bit of time to talk to you, and good luck in your upcoming match.
Thank you.
A confidence from both of the veterans that we were able to speak to prior to this matchup. Solar Scarabs versus Bolt, absolutely one of the most anticipated fan matchups of the year, and I can't wait to see which one of these two teams comes out on top. Picks and Bans Mifflin for game number 1. And this is such, I think, a unique opportunity to talk picks and bans, because with the Solar Scarabs, we don't like know, right? I mean, we know what SOT likes to play. We obviously know what Zapman likes to play, but we don't know where the priority is going to lie with this team, what draft strategy they have put forward. The Bolts, again, if we're going to keep reiterating the point, we know what types of strategy they have that carry over from Season 7. This is going to be a class, I think, for all of us in discussing picks and bans for this Scarabs team, because you don't know where the priority lies just yet.
But it feels like Zapman's got a pretty good idea of what the strategy is going to be for the Scarabs team, or for the Bolts, rather. Either come invade my purple. If you get it, you might win. If you don't, you're going to lose. It's kind of crazy to me that he's so willing to throw out a call like that. It feels like a call out even. Maybe diversify your approach there, Bolts, as they go ahead and remove Yomoji in that top fan slot. Look at him sporting that nice jersey as well. The Bolts, that might be one of my favorites.
Yeah, the Bolts have a great jersey. The Scarabs also have a really good jersey. Insight Apparel Company is our jersey sponsor, our clothing sponsor for Season 8 here in the SPL. Shop.smiteproleague.com if you want to grab a jersey. Maybe wait till after the matchup. If you're a bit of a bandwagoner, you can just jump on whichever team wins, because I know a lot of people are kind of flip-flopping between one or the other. You know, if you're a Jazzberry Jam type person, you're probably feeling good about your Insight Apparel Company purchase after our first set of the day. But this is the matchup here, Mifflin. I like this side-by-side. This is a matchup as old as time, isn't it? Zapman up against Barracuda. In a different team for Zap this year, and another run back, though, of a very exciting ADC matchup to watch.
I'm super pumped for it, but it seems like ADCs aren't going to be the priorities for these two teams. The Bolts immediately going towards that Guan Yu pick in the top slot, an incredibly versatile pick. Could go into jungle, could go into solo, could even go into support, but likely going into that solo lane, making sure he gets that farm under his belt so he could rotate out and make use of those heals.
That's right, Guan Yu Achilles. So what we're assuming are solo laners locked in here. First and foremost overall, Set has been banned out 50% of the time, only picked up in a couple of the games that he's been available. But Mifflin, he has won the game where Set has been available. So Achilles, Set, that's a pretty powerful start here for the Solar Scarabs draft.
It is. I know that Layers loves this Set pick as well. He's the type of dude who wants to get aggressive. He wants to be able to dictate the pace of that game. If he's allowed to, he'll make solo agent plays in the enemy jungle and just pray that the enemy team isn't quite able to rotate in. So keep your eyes on the Solar Scarabs jungler player as the Bolts, quick on the draw, lock in Surket and Sobek for themselves. Likely going to be support and jungle, not respectively. Jungle and support respectively. Surket going to be very good for trying to shut down Achilles in solo lane if the Bolts try and reprise the strategy they used yesterday, but Yanis locked in. That's not how he wins.
Yeah, games played 2, win rate 100%. I think Hurriwin's name is attached to that one. Look, Barracuda's laughing, so maybe they've got some strategy built around this. This is kind of nuts, and it's just the way it works out. Baronic, new to the SPL this year, picks Giannis immediately after, one of the best to ever do it on the pick, does it in the set beforehand. So while there is no direct comparison within this set itself, you got some big shoes to fill, I feel like, automatically after what we just saw.
Yeah, tough act to follow, to be sure. Apollo and Morrigan are going to be the bans from the Scarabs, and the Bolt's going to go ahead and remove Ymir and Kepri, taking a shot at Inbound's Godpool himself. There still is a lot of gods available for support if the Scarabs do elect to try and prioritize that here. Could look towards maybe something a little bit more aggressive, but instead, it's going to be a Hunter lock-in. The on her, Zapman trying to bring it to Barracuda, aggressive.
Plenty of burst damage for this Solar Scarabs draft throughout the onset, at least. So the Bolt's still looking for a Hunter and a mid laner of their own. Kukulkan, Miff, in and out of the draft here as of late, largely centered around drafts that can set up successfully for that Spirit of the Nine wins. Much like Giannis, 2 games played, 2 games won. But from what you've seen, because we're assuming it's just a Hunter that needs to get drafted here, does the Kukulkan have a draft built around it that you think makes it successful?
For sure, Guan Yu Cavalry Charge, just the slow should be enough to set up for some of these Spirit of the Nine wins. Surket Ultimate can do it as well. Not much better than holding someone in place and then throwing them at you to make sure you're able to hit your own abilities, as well as just the pluck should be enough.
Right.
I really do like this draft from the Bolts. Chernobog going to be rounding out that top 5 for them. So it's going to be an on-her versus Chernobog matchup. Maybe we see Barracuda play the lane a little bit safer, a little bit more passive, and then use that ultimate to rotate out, whereas the Scarabs going for a very defensive support.
Wow.
Geb locked in for Inbound.
Yep.
That's a brand new look for the young man.
It absolutely is, and maybe Inbound will be privy to put a bit of a twist on this Geb pick. I mean, you talk about lockdown, Mifflin, much can be said the same for this Giannis pick as well. Obviously, Hurriwin was doing most of the engaging for the Jade Dragons in our first set of the day, but the more setup you get on that through space and time is obviously going to be better. And there's a good bit of it on that Solar Scarabs draft as well. If you get some lockdown, Baronic's going to have an easier time confirming that damage.
He will, the Achilles stun as well as the Cataclysm. I think that, if anything, I am expecting Baronic to play more so as a solo agent, maybe utilizing the shield from Geb to just get that additional safety net as well. But I'm not expecting him to really be holding that ultimate for any sort of lockdown or anything along those lines. I'm expecting Baronic to at least try and emulate the same playstyle that we saw from Hurriwin, just throwing him out Hail Mary style. Maybe I hit somebody, maybe I don't. If you're Hurriwin, you're just hitting him. If you're Baronic, we'll give him at least a 50% odds at hitting every single one of these. I'm really really excited to see how they decide, the Scarabs that is, to play around their jungler. They're going to do what the Bolts did yesterday and kind of play that 2-1-2 meta. Or are we going to have Layers really try and emphasize playing around the people that he's comfortable with, like Veronic and Bobby inside the mid lane? Keep your eyes on this set, man. He's going to be following the action.
I'm intrigued as well about how this duo lane is going to look. Look, we know that Jake loves to just run at the enemy duo lane. He's got a pick that's able to do so. Ramsey's agreeing here. I don't know if you can hear her in the background. She is
I can.
desperate to go outside. In the morning, it was pouring rain, so the poor dog didn't get to get out and exercise as much as she normally does. I want to know how you think this duo lane is going to go, though, here, Mifflin. Do you feel like you're conceding pressure by picking a Geb into something like a Sobek, or is that not really a big concern?
Anytime you lock in Geb, you're conceding at least a little bit of pressure, but with recent Geb changes, his second ability, that Shockwave, you can deal a lot more damage from a range. Beforehand, you had to be a lot closer if you wanted the full value of that ability, but now there's going to be a lot less variance on the damage, which should help out a little bit insofar as wave clear. But up against Sobek and Chernobog,
yep.
I think you're going to still, even with on her in the duo lane, give the fighting edge to the Bolts.
And I imagine we look here, Mifflin, at the Achilles and the Set. And I think probably safe to assume that it's Achilles in the solo lane, Set then out of the jungle. Do you like this idea here from the Scarabs to give Layers this Set pick in his SPL debut?
Oh, I love it. I love it, man. Layers has been playing Set since Set came out. It's an aggressive pick. It fits his play style. The only thing that I may have preferred seeing him on is the Thor. That's because his Thor is so incredibly strong. It's how he beat me way back in the Waywin. I like it a lot. I think it's going to allow him to... Stop, Dave. Every time, man. Every time.
Yeah, look. All right. The problem is you're going to, like, nitpick me. I'm going to tilt, and then this whole death segment is just going to go off the rails. Because that's the thing. It's like you bait me in, and I go on the offensive. I go on the offensive for just a second, and then you, like, counterpunch me back, and then my brain just kind of goes to mush. Let's look at this Bolts draft, though. I think interesting that the Serket pick comes out here. We've seen a lot more bursty assassin types, at least starting off today. Sanford Soccer, of course, picking out that Osiris. How does Lasbra on this Serket look when built in with the rest of this Bolts draft?
I'm expecting Lasbra to go for that tanky playstyle that he did yesterday. So expect Shifter Shield immediately into on Chile, which means that Serket's going to take a little bit longer to come online. Once he does come online, expect him to play an initiator role. Maybe try and burn away some beads with his taunts as well as his ultimate so that Sobek and Guan Yu have an easier time engaging themselves. He's really, his main job, Lasbra that is to keep his eyes on this Yanis. Make sure Veronic isn't able to play that free cast style, portering through walls, using the unstable vortex in your backline. If Serket's ever able to close the gap, should at least be able to alleviate some of the pressure on his team.
And, you know, you got to feel like the Bolts are going into this game with maybe a little extra heat after the way that their first set of the year went. Going against the Leviathans, I mean, you showed some signs of life. Is something I've been saying when a team loses pretty handily, just trying to find something good to say about it. So the Bolts, obviously, I think, have to be going into this matchup against the Scarabs, a team that the fans and all of us, I think, have pretty closely matched with one another. But this is a big one, I think, early on already in the season for the Bolts, and we're really going to get a taste of the adaptability of this squad and their ability to kind of overcome an early woe. And at least, look, if you don't win this set, if you're the Bolts, I think you at least have to look very competitive.
Yeah, I think that the Bolts are also coming into this one knowing that the majority of fans at home likely have the Scarabs pretty low on their power rankings, as well as the rest of the SPL, because they are that spiritual successor to the Obey roster, because they do have the most amateurs coming into the league, the most rookies, if you would. I think that this is one that the Bolts are probably approaching, saying to themselves, we can't lose this one. We already dropped one of the Leviathans. We need to pick up our game against the Bolts. The Bolts certainly could be just an out-of-pocket, awesome team, out of left field no one was expecting. We don't have that data on them yet, but expect great things. They've all competed at the top level.
And I think if the Kings showed us anything yesterday, Mifflin, it's a team that we expected the Kings to take some time to build up, that roster, kind of bits and pieces from all over the league that then got stuck together. And the Kings looked incredible. The Jade Dragons are going up against the Kings tomorrow, and suddenly that might be the most anticipated matchup of the weekend after what the Dragons did the Warriors earlier today. Maybe you could say the same thing about this Scarab squad, where you get these bits and pieces. Obviously, their core 3v3 has played together on console in the past. But as far as SPL experience goes, do you think that that's a bit of an edge? Where you even heard it in the interview with Venenu, he's like, man, I don't really have a lot of data on this guy or this guy. I'm really excited to see how they are. Is that an edge in your eyes? It's unproven, but that also means it's maybe unresearched.
It is pretty hard to say, right? Is it an edge? Yes, having no data on your opposition is really hard to plan for, but being able to lean on that tenureship, that veteranship that the Bolts have, they've got the experience playing at this highest level on the PC as well. I don't think that the Scarabs have that exact same level of comfortability. They're going to have to really adapt on the fly to this new SPL style.
Fair enough, Mifflin. Well, look, the drafts are locked in. We're going to jump to a break on our side. When we come back, Game 1 between the Bolts and the Scarabs will kick off.
Welcome back, Smite fans. Finch here, and sorry for the delay. Now what's going on is we are working on remaking that lobby. Don't worry about the picks. None of that's going to be changing. But what we're doing is trying to get these players back in so you can see the action. So it's going to be another short break, but then we'll be right back with plenty more SPL. Welcome back to the SBL. Finch and Gormizer here, which means we are just about ready to start moving into the actual action. Should be getting pulled in any moment here now. Gore, I think it is worth noting how big I think this game is for both of these teams, though. In particular, the Bolts, who they kind of covered on the desk, coming off a pretty tough loss, really would like to get some of that momentum going and recapture what they had back in Season 7. So let's see how it works as we move here into the action.
And it did take him a little while to get there in Season 7, right? Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
We're trying to recapture a moment that admittedly happened towards the end of the year, and mainly at Worlds, right? Like, they popped off at Worlds up until they met what is now the Jade Dragons, but can they hold on to that? The answer to that yesterday was a weirdly loud, resounding no, and it kind of is echoing through the map if you listen very carefully. I want to see some changes for that today. Lasbra has switched over to the Circuit they didn't play yesterday. You get Jake on something aggressive. This Chernabog we've seen very popular the last few weeks in the SCC. And you have to talk about it. I mean, yes, we just saw Hurwind and what he can do on this Yanis, and I think a lot of the highlights for Baronic were on this Yanis. But Venenu, this Kukulkan, having a 100% win rate, kind of out of nowhere there, not even a couple of days ago, yesterday from the Kings, it makes me a little more excited for what the Bolts are going to be able to bring here. Although I'm not quite counting out the Scarabs just yet, right? Like, anything can happen here, and it all depends on the Bolts.
I think this might be one of the closest sets that we've had so far. I'm excited to see the end-up results. Take a look at Lasbra's start here, though. I think he had no potions or anything in that consumable slots. The Bumbus Dagger into Boots 2. Pretty aggressive start for him. Expecting he'll be able to take a quick back and finish up the Warrior Tabi right away. Going to be the call for him. And I think he's going to be instrumental here. You talked about the Kukulkan success. Going to be real easy if every ult he's hitting is on the back of a last breath from Lasbra. And then you act in that he might be getting Sobek Pluck. Should be pretty consistently finding good damage, I think, from Venenu. Even before we even really get to the teamfight stages, Lasbra looking for an early gank here on solo, but Doug, as always, is perfect. Per award right there, Lasbra was always known.
Just kind of chilling. And admittedly, it's not the end of the world, right? You walk over there, maybe you strip some experience from your solo laner. Like, I don't know that SOT gets killed off right there. Although, maybe there's a little bit of bad blood. Maybe Lasbra wants that kill, right? Because they did play with him at the beginning of last year. Maybe he knows the tendencies that Solar Troll would have, and so he wants to capitalize on those while possible. Also, getting Guan Yu ahead is going to be favorable for you, right? I mean, it's so difficult early on to stop Guan Yu from just existing. And then late game, by the time you're actually able to feel like you can control him, he's stunning you with his ult, he's shredding all your protections and setting up someone like Venenu to just ult you and have fun throughout the rest of the game. So if you can get him to a lead, I think the Bolts will be pretty happy with that. The Scarabs, though, I'm very excited to watch because I want to know what Layers is going to do. Layers was, I would argue, the most talked about player that I remember in the offseason. Like, people, when Roster Apocalypse is going on, everyone is saying if Layers does not end up on an SBL team, someone's doing something wrong. And so it's nice to see him here.
Zapman doing a good job avoiding getting pulled in by the 408. And I'm right there with you. How about Layers? As Lasbra's lurking in the jungle, and he might have an opportunity to get aggressive here, but he's waiting more on the invade than an actual gank. That purple buff is the target. Death Bane will be enough, plus an auto, to make sure that buff is dropped. But yeah, I'm right there with you, man. A lot of people are saying if Layers doesn't get a shot, it just doesn't seem right. He earned it with the performance that he had, and now we'll see if he can continue to live up to that here in the actual SBL. And a lot of these rosters coming into the season went through a lot of different iterations, you know, not all quite the way they were when they initially were submitted or formed. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't think Baronic was initially who they thought on this roster, but you end up with Baronic, I don't think you're feeling bad. I'm really excited for this guy to kind of prove that he deserves to be up here too, because I don't know that he was on a lot of people's radar as being that next mid laner up, but I think he's got a chance to kind of earn his name.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see the Scarabs and what they can bring, because even though it's really weird, Myth said this, where the Scarabs are kind of the spiritual successor to Obey, and there's only one member from Obey on here, yet it still rings true to me. Like, I don't understand how that happened in my brain, and how he was able to word that in a way that I had never connected it, but for some reason, this does feel like the team that is kind of, like, right now people are not expecting a lot out of the Scarabs, but this is a dark horse team. I think that, I think I even said this in the video we released for them. Maybe they're not even going to have a great Phase 1, but if you look at the playoffs, I think they're going to pop off, right? Like, that's the moments. I think they're going to have very big events and maybe just kind of drift through middle of the pack overall here in the regular season. But I'm really, again, just anticipating so much from this mid-jungle combo. We've seen every single one of these other players in the Pro League at one time or another, so it really is Boronic and Layers to kind of shift things up, right? There's the dynamic of Zapman and Inbound and how SOT fits in with this team, but it really is watching that mid-jungle and what they can do for the Scarabs that I think will either escalate them towards the top half of the SBL or keep them down to the bottom 4.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's going to be on Inbound and Layers in particular. Inbound, not a great season for him last year, but improving the whole time. I don't think anyone that could watch him at the beginning and at the end couldn't notice that he was picking his spots a lot better towards the end of that season, but I think they're going to need him to improve even more as Laspra, considering a red buff invade. He's on it, and Deathbane about as good as it gets in terms of confirmation. And Inbound also in the sights of the Olympus Bolts. He's in the middle of rollout, but has been interrupted. Somehow still alive, drops the shell, and continues to run, but Laspra comes in and Layers somehow gets Barracuda first. That's huge for the Scarabs, as it looks like they're the ones who find that first blood. Can they get to Jake? No, looks like he'll be able to fall back towards safety, but what a play there from Layers.
I mean, Inbound just neo-dodging the bullets coming his way to make sure he doesn't get first blooded there. Still goes down, but support for carry is going to be worthwhile for you here. Zapman does need to still be careful because Laspra likes hanging out on the side of the map. But Zapman's used to that.
Beads let him get away from Cobra's Kiss, but not from the pluck. Laspra comes back in and gets the kill on the tail end. So great work there by this awesome Jake Laspra combo to clean up Zapman, looking for maybe a little bit of a lazy back, but thought he had a good chance to get away from Laspra even with him there, as now Jake stepping up, looking to strip away the purple with a little bit of help from Laspra, probably a lot of it in terms of actually putting out the damage, and looks like they do so. Good pressure from the Bolts in this early game so far, but this game still very much even close. No one's really gotten far ahead from anyone in anything crazy.
That's the glory of that first blood bounty, right? Scarabs, the only reason they're not really falling that far behind right now is because they got the bounty to help even out all of these buffs that Lasbra's been stealing. I mean, it was what? The red buff, the purple buff, now twice over here on the left-hand side. Lasbra is putting a lot of focus over here for the duo lane. And admittedly, I think it makes sense, right? Hang out with Venenu, get him to the point where Spirit of the Nine Winds is going to insta-kill anybody that he happens to hit, and you're going to be fine. But Jake was so essential to this team last year. I mean, we talked about them both, Inbound and Jake, rookies coming into Season 7. Now they have that 1-year experience under their belts. And I would agree with you, like you said, Inbound, if you watch his last game of the season in Season 7 to his first game, they are two completely different people. But if you watch Jake, you slowly see him become essential to what is the Bolts team. I mean, it felt like if they did not have someone playing the way he was towards the end of the year, they wouldn't be able to win half the games they had. He was perfect for their playstyle, and if they can hit that stride again, just find that flow. They got yesterday's set out of the way, so they've already got the one maybe nervous jitters of the live performance out of the way, and jump in here and feel that confidence once again that they know they can have. It'll make it a lot easier for Haddix to rotate over, although he definitely looked solid yesterday, even though things didn't quite go their way. I think this is a team that once they find that groove again, it's going to be very hard to really knock them off their step.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important for them to get Haddix some more opportunities too, because he was doing well in a tough spot. So getting into a position where it's more from neutral, where he's allowed to be the player that we know that he can be, I think it'd be really, really important for this squad, and for him in particular. So things kind of moving as Lasbra dictates them in this game so far, right? He's been the one looking for these invades, applying pressure, was even sticking around to make sure Zapman's life wasn't very easy over on that duo side as well. And now here the Olympus Bolts are on the back of what Lasbra did, invading the purple buff again, and they grab it. It's back onto Awesome Jake. Layers is going to have to make sure that he's over here, or someone, Gore, because that purple buff is under constant assault from the Olympus Bolts.
Not much Zapman seems to be able to do about it either. Inbound, obviously, as we just saw, can't do too much about it, so they, like you said, need some external help. Although Layers, I think this is really interesting, still a little ahead of Lasbra in terms of experience. He's been sitting at level 9, while Lasbra's been at level 8 pretty much the last minute and a half. And so even though there's 2 kills there for the Circuit, you can tell that Layers is getting the farm that is necessary, even though he's losing the purple bus, what realistically is mainly affecting Inbound right now. 2 levels down there for the support. He's not getting as much, anywhere near as much, at least, as Zapman and the rest of his team, which early on, I will admit, it hurts as a support player, but it's not the end of the world, right? Geb definitely would rather be level 8 right now and on par with
Yeah.
Awesome Jake, but you are expecting yourself to fall behind. It looks like he's going for that Thieves build, so you know you're going to be having a slow build up anyway. And so I like the fact that they're just kind of taking it in stride, saying, you know what, maybe we don't quite win the early game every time in duo, but we'll win something. We'll take ourselves for Gorp over here on the left-hand side. The Gold Fury Scorpion has been picked up. Plus, again, they're losing that one bit of experience in terms of a purple buff, but they still have a gold lead. It's not much. It's only 200, 300 given the waves, but it's still something for them to build off of.
It is, and I think a lot of it is Layers kind of keeping his head down and farming. His inbound plucked in. This is a bad situation. Hit by the Venenu ultimate, but somehow still alive. But in comes Addicts, Barracuda as well, and they will get the kill onto inbound once all is said and done. A heavy commitment, but without a doubt, the support's dead.
Yeah, being able to walk in, get out of there, like, every single ult is down on the left-hand side. The bolts did not leave anything up to chance. That's the downside I think Inbound's going to have here. The charge time, not even charge time, I guess cast time for Cataclysm is going to keep him rooted just long enough that Venenu's going to get a lot of damage down. It doesn't matter if Spirit of the Nine Winds is up. He's going to be able to get his Tornado and his Squall down in a matter of seconds if he wants to. So he has to be very careful, I think, on those engage moments because it's going to be so much easier for quite a few members of the bolts to get the damage down into him. One of the downsides of Geb there. Also, it doesn't have the blink just yet, so it's a little telegraphed when you're just running at the opponent to try and get in there. Luckily for them, again, it's just a support kill. It's not the end-all be-all. Still 2 levels down, but something you can bounce back from.
And I think worth noting, we saw Zapman essentially solo this Gorp earlier on, as you kind of talked about, and that means now this Fury is open. That's a big place on the map where you can start seeing some fighting going on. If Olympus wants to get another pick, you come right over to that with the best confirm on the map. That's a strong play for this team. Right now, at this point in the game, perfectly happy with just kind of bullying inbound every time he gebs into frame. But eventually, they're going to need to start chaining that into opportunities because as Lasbra and the squad 5-man rotate onto inbound, Layers just continues to farm. That's why he's got a level and a half lead. Looks like 2 at this point in 12 to 10. And Lasbra only got to 10 by leeching a bit from Solo. Got to make sure that they're not just settling for only these picks and they keep continuing to get their pressure on buffs and camps in the jungle. Because otherwise, the focus from the rest of the Scarabs on farming is just going to work.
And you can see why that farm is so prominent. Not only did Gorp go down, but Forp went down, right? I mean, this is something that changed specifically in this update. Made it a little easier to kill him. I mean, we got used to, again, over the last couple of weeks in SCC, 10 to 12 minutes was when Gold Fury side would go, and then maybe 18 minutes was when you'd finally see someone go and assault the Scorpion on the Fire Giant side. Now that they're falling a little bit faster, a little easier to take down, and opening that possibility for, like you said, Zapman to come over and maybe potentially solo it, it opens up little plays like this where if you can just get the zone, you have the turn and burn. It's not as much as a Gold Fury, but it's still a big pick.
Oh, SOT sure was close to taking it away there, but it ends up going over to the bolts. But look at this response from the Scarabs. They weren't just sitting on their hands. They bring Zapman inbound over to invade the red buff. And now the rotation of the rest of the bolts is coming. Jake and Ven are moving in, but they're going to get the sad news that everything is not there. So this game's still very, very much close, but these teams have different approaches to how they want to play this early game as the Scarabs are now on the Gold Fury and trying to burn it down to half HP, and I don't really see anyone from the bolts nearby. The only one is Jake, and nothing he can do. Great play from the Chaos side team, who don't seem concerned with kills at all.
I mean, that's just a great shot call coming down from that one, right? Like, you already have a little bit of a lead. You recognize where they are. Nobody on the Bolt seems to recognize where they've gone. And now it's left them in a position where, yeah, you might lose Solo or Jolt. This is still going to be worthwhile, even if he dies here. I mean, yeah, cool. You get the solo hand gank. You use 2 ults in the case of SOT to get that. I think the Scarabs are just playing the map a little stronger right now. All across the board, that red buff invade into the Gold Fury. They have those enhanced buffs now around their belt, which I'm going to say gives a lot of credit over to Zapman. There's a lot of attack speed on the enhanced purple buff here, a little bit more than what you get out of like the enhanced red buff, and realistically like the enhanced speed buff if they pick that one up a little bit later. And so I really like that the Scarabs are playing as kind of nonchalant as they are, right? They don't seem to have a care in the world.
I'm with you. I do think that pick ends up being a bit of a problem when more of the jungle gets invaded, but I'm with you. You want to be the team that's focused more on these objectives. The Bolts do find something to bring things a bit closer back together by taking some Harpies, that Greater Scorpion, things like that. But the Scarabs, I think, are really kind of hedging their bets on when Layers eventually comes out from hibernation. He has been kind of a non-factor in the actual fights themselves, not really a complaint or a criticism. He has made the plan, the focus on farming, but now here he is with Jotuns and good CDR, Warrior Tabi, and Shifter Shield finished. He's got to be pretty close to the point when he wants to start getting a bit more involved in these fights. Just a question of what are they going to fight over? Will it be Furies? Will it just be looking for opportunities where cooldowns are forced? Or is Layers going to wait for even potentially a 4th item to come out before he starts to really pull the trigger? I think they're kind of hedging some of their bets on what can come out a little bit later in this game, and as you said, not so much stressing as Jake has walked into this engagement all alone on the wrong side of the map, makes it into the Lurking in the Waters, but Desert Fury's there. He cancels it early, dashes out, but in comes Baronic, using that through space and time, does not connect, and Jake's going to make it out.
And Jake was one step away from turning right into that.
Certainly.
I mean, that was, I want to say, presence of mind to make sure he does a little bit of a double take and take that step back. But a good shot from Baronic doesn't quite work out the way that they wanted. And Finch, as much as I wanted to compliment the Scarabs earlier, you lose that one tier 1 in right, and now look at the gold lead. It gets back down to 200. It means nothing anymore. Everything that they've done in terms of objectives has essentially been washed completely clear here by the Bolts. And experience as well. I mean, just narrowly in favor of the Bolts, so definitely something that you wouldn't like seeing. The fact that at the very end there, it spikes downward, but you're 15 minutes into this game, the kills read 4-1. It seems like it should be a Bolts lead at this point, but it's virtually the same as if they had just sat in and been neutral for all 16 minutes that things have been going on. It's just well played from the Bolts to get these invades and strip away some of the power from the Scarabs, even though they've lost, I would argue, one of the bigger objectives in that Gold Fury.
Yeah, and it's interesting in terms of how it places out, because there are still some disparities in the actual matchups. It just seems to even out overall. They managed to get Solo ahead with that gank on the Solar Troll and farming that right side. So now Haddix is a 2-level lead. As the Bolts take care of this mid-tier 1, the Scarabs are not committing to a defense here, and that will be one more objective, the tier 1 in right and now this tier 1 in mid, that the Bolts have managed to obtain. Still a bit of a lead in the jungle for Layers, bit of a lead in mid for Baronic for sure. But they're having to deal and contend with the fact that solo support and ADC, experience-wise, are favoring the Bolts.
Even though the jungle's behind, I feel like Lasbra is more locked in than what we got to see yesterday. He's a little more proactive than what we got to see. That Tsukiyomi pick that they just kept locking in didn't work.
Well, Jake is the target here. Layers wants to commit, but the backup has shown up in the form of Venenu and the rest of the squad. So the Scarabs give up on that all-out assault onto young, awesome Jake. Beads came out from Barracuda as well. That's certainly worthwhile, makes him quite the bit more vulnerable. But take a look at this relic selection. How to let this pass me by? It's 4 upgraded shells there. They're saying that even once Layers does eventually pull the trigger, they're not letting him be what wins this for the Scarabs.
Honestly, that opens the door for Baronic to find more success this time, right? Like, you can still have that big burst from the Mage. Since you don't have things like the Aegis, it's going to cause some trouble there for the Bolts. But at the same time, like you said, Zapman, Layers, honestly to an extent Solar Troll, unless he's using his abilities for the damage, are going to be finding themselves running into a wall flat. And it's going to hurt Layers most of all when he does start finding these dives. And that's assuming he does. I think he might go in. Maybe he's just the shell burner at this point. If it costs him his life, they just have to hope that Zap and Baronic can follow up, or vice versa. If Zapman's the one that becomes the shell burner, then Layers will be able to follow it up. I still have a lot of hope for him after what we got to see out of Layers all last year in the SEC, but it's whether or not they can make it work and really collapse in, because now we're getting to the point where team fights are incredibly crucial, and it's going to be the second Fury that's going down pretty much without any contest. And if this one, especially as a Primal Fury, goes the way of the Bolts, it makes it a lot easier to transition over to a Fire Giant. If the Scarabs don't start grouping up soon, Bolts are just going to start running away.
Yeah, I'm with you, Gore. Look at those charts, though. What a way for this game to have unfolded, basically showing that there's never been more than, a 2, even 3K gold separation between these two teams. It has been very, very close throughout this one. Yeah, not even 1,500 experience or 1,000 gold has ever really separated these teams. Maybe a little bit more than that in the Scarabs' favor, around the 14-minute mark or so, but that was brought right on back down It's just been even. It's been a difference in ideologies between these two teams, and how do you go about establishing your lead? Is it based off of these ganks, and then those ganks giving you access to jungle invades, or is it what the Scarabs have been doing, kind of keeping their heads down, not over-rotating, and using that time when maybe a gank doesn't pan out, or even when they do get a gank and they end up splitting their farm, and efficiently the other team in response can just make sure they're getting all their camps perfectly on time. And what we've really found from it is that difference in ideologies amounts to about a 700 gold difference at this point.
And I'm excited to see this. I mean, look at the builds for SOT and Layers. Like, first off, mirroring each other pretty similarly. If Layers goes for a Void Shield, the only thing he's done different is that Jotuns, and of course the startering items there for the Bluestone. But that Ankile at the very end, that physical power and magical prot kind of hybrid that's going to be in, the silence that comes through with that is maybe essential for them here. Again, I'm looking at a lot of control, a lot of lockdown, but all of a sudden you have the capabilities of stopping Venenu. If Haddix is in there, that silence is going to make sure it hits him. He's in melee range. Same thing for Lasbra. So maybe a saving grace for these two who are going to be diving in and potentially getting peeled off of someone like Venenu. I like seeing it because it, to me, spells that they want to be more proactive. I just wish we got to see the proactive part so far. It's been 20 minutes, and I haven't seen Layers really get aggressive onto a fight.
SOT is the target. They are full-on diving this Tier 2 tower 20.5 minutes into the game, looking for the enemy solo laner. That pressure does work. SOT's beads and his ult are down. Same thing for Baronix, but also so is Haddix and Awesome Jakes. And Haddix used his upgraded shell, so relics and ults traded on both sides. But Solar Patrol survives the pressure. But look at this, the bolts are right back. This isn't about much else than just grouping up and looking for places to apply pressure.
And look at Barra, he's over there split pushing the Tier 2 because he knows he can just get over here in an instant if his team needs it.
There's the ultimate from Venenu. That hits several, and Layers is the one that's low already. Lasbra escapes, and Barracuda puts down the opposing junglers. That man in trouble as well. Pulls off both of the relics, keeps him alive for the moment, but Jake catches up, and his support dies right behind him. A 3-for-0 wipe as the bolts group up, decide to fight and win it.
There is not a lot of ways to describe that one out of just clean, right? I mean, that was good from the bolts. That's what I wanted to see yesterday. I was really concerned how they handled the Leviathans, but admittedly, this is where the Leviathans were shining the brightest, right? You get to those late-game team fights, and that's always been their strong suit. We kind of had to reconcile with that again yesterday as like a fresh reminder that if you get to the 5-on-5, they're just play better than most teams. But the bolts, making sure that this time, again, they all kind of fit together perfectly. You can see where things are falling apart. It doesn't feel like Layers is being as proactive as someone like Lasbra right now. Lasbra's looking for these engagements, looking for the fight, trying to figure out where the setup and control can be for his teammates versus where we're seeing like SOT, Layers, even, you know, inbound, a little more passive, not engaging on the bolts, and that's giving the bolts a lot of room to work with, and they're kind of taking the jungle and forming it to whatever they need the fight to be, and separating the Scarabs in a way that unfortunately leads to 3 deaths like that.
Yeah, an impressive fight. Kind of forcing SO2 in an uncomfortable position at the start, getting rid of his beads early on, and then using that fight to kind of break up the Scarabs' positioning when they step in. And this is a tough one. It kind of felt like the Scarabs were hedging their bets on this Layers Baronic sort of combination once this late game started to roll around. But those two didn't get to do a whole lot in that last team fight. Layers in particular was kind of blown up before he really ever got to his relevancy. So it's the Tier 2 tower in mid. Meanwhile, Layers and SOT are pushing down on this right Tier 2 over in the solo lane. So they're going to look to trade out a couple of Tier 2 towers, but without them there, this mid Phoenix should be relatively exposed. And the Scarab's going to have a hard time defending it. Plus, Barra split pushing the Tier 2 over and left. They give up on the Phoenix, come back, and regroup.
A little bit of pressure on right-hand side. Didn't even get the Tier 2 as a trade for the 2 Tier 2s over here for the bolts. That is a nice chunk of gold in their pocket. 8,000 gold that they're not going to be able to run away with. Should be a nice Fury pickup for them as well. And being an Oni Fury, This couldn't have been better timing for him, right? 3 minutes left in the power play. It means that they have so much control with these Oni minion waves that are about to start pushing down. A single Phoenix should fall at the minimum. It might cause a little bit of blood there for the Bolts, but they should be able to find one before this FG buff disappears. Otherwise, it might go back to a slow pace. There's not a lot to do in the jungle right now. There's a Pyromancer. Soon enough, a speed buff, the blue buff there for the Bolts, but you really only should have one focus right now, and that is getting these waves as far down the lane as possible here for the Bolts and get some of that pressure. Ideally onto this left Phoenix, mid Phoenix works just as well, and with those now fresh Oni minion waves spawning across all the board, it's going to make it a lot easier for them to get in there. Plus, Bear has been playing this Chernobog incredibly clean in terms of his split push capabilities. It's something we kind of got used to seeing him do in Worlds with that Apollo, coming into the fights when his team needs him, and not wasting his time with his team if they don't need him. He's not going to go around and mess with you in the right-hand jungle unless he absolutely has to be there, and it opens him up for pressure like this.
So Haddix and Jake move in first. Scarabs in position to defend. They've got Lasper off in mid. It looks like Layers will be the one in between, waiting to defend once Lasper threatens this mid-Phoenix. Olympus Bolts are considering pushing in, but kind of holding formation for now. Portal up if an escape is needed, not quite. So that means the Bolts will fall back. Now Lasper chooses to be the one that moves in. Veronic puts some damage his way. They send Lasper back, and this left Phoenix is down to half HP. Still no one on the Scarabs looking to be that first one in to push up. And the Olympus Bolts are taking advantage, whittling down the left side Phoenix without much resistance. And the ult from Venenu flattens inbound. He's low. And it feels like the Scarabs can't pick their spots or their moments. They're waiting for the Bolts to walk in and take the fight handily as Layers gets grabbed, plucked in. Venenu has the damage in the late game. And this one's starting to get closer to over than anything else.
I mean, look, I want to be a Scarabs believer, man, but what are you gonna, like, you're just staring at him over here on left, like, I'm gonna mean mug you out of the Phoenix, like, they did not care on the side of the Bolts. It's 10-1, I mean, they might just be able to walk this one in. Zapman's ult is down, same thing for Veronic. They don't have enough damage to deal with this.
And the Titan's starting to melt. The Olympus Bolts able to find a Game 1 victory over the Scarabs. And Gore, if I'm being entirely honest with you, this kind of just came down to that jungle fight, right? I mean, despite how the first 20 minutes of this game went, they were essentially even, and then the Bolts win a big fight, they get fire, and they clean up the game from there, easy as you like.
I think there should at least have been other bumps in the road. Again, that last Phoenix, they just kind of watched. There was no engage from the Scarabs. By the time they started to go in, the Phoenix is down, all of your health bars and ults are gone. Like, you just waited so long to fight back that there was no way for you to really get back into there. It feels like they were just very passive throughout the entire game, almost complacent with just letting the Bolts win. They got to shift that mentality heavily before Game 2.
Yep, I thought we were waiting for a Layers Veronic kind of pop-off later, but it looked like we were
we're still waiting.
Yeah, that'll be it for game number 1, though. Quick break while both these teams look to come into game 2 with a different mentality.
got some good musical vibes here this year, whether it's the bumpers or the intros or whatever it may be. Lo-Fi Zeus is one of my new favorites. Good vibes for the Bolts as well after game number 1. And if you at home are hankering for a new SPL jersey after what you just saw the Bolts do, head on over to shop.smiteproleague.com. Grab yourself one of these awesome jerseys. We have partnered with Insight Apparel Company for this year in the SPL. All 8 of the team jerseys on screen here. We've got hoodies, we've got t-shirts, all that sort of fun stuff. Shop.smiteproleague.com. Again, thanks to Insight Apparel Company for partnering with us this year. Some awesome jerseys there to choose from. Mifflin joins me, though, to break down game number 1 between the Scarabs and the Bolts. A much-needed bounce-back game, I think, here, Mifflin, after what the Bolts went through yesterday.
It is, man, and it's hard to talk about anything else, right? What was the final slash line for the Scarabs? Just 1 kill across the board for the young jungler. These are the hardest ones to break down because this is one where the Bolts really did have control the entire time, except for that split second where First Blood went the way of the Scarabs. After that, it was all Bolts all the way. Zapman even calls out the strategy in his interview, says, all right, they're going to invade my purple buff, and if they get it, they might win, and if they don't, they're going to lose. And then the Bolts invaded the purple buff 7 times in a row, and got all 7 of them.
Mifflin, is this the type of game, and you know, it's always tough, I imagine, as one of our senior big brain analysts here after games like this. I mean, if you're really breaking down the Scarabs draft, no, your brain is senior, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I mean,
22.
Title notwithstanding. Right, all right. So you're dragging, I'm building you up. All right, we're analyzing this game because this is what you get. You get under my skin. But let's talk about inbound here. I want to talk about this Solar Scarabs draft. It's just the type of draft that you totally abandon after a game like game number 1? Like, you know what I mean? Is it a performance-based issue, you think, with this draft? I was a little iffy on the Geb pick. I thought they were conceding a lot of pressure. Or do you think that this is something that there are bits and pieces of the Scarabs draft that you can go back to despite what was a pretty handy defeat at the hands of the Bolts?
It's so hard to say, right, because of how handy that defeat really was. There are individual pieces that could have worked. Boronic was essentially AFK. 0-0-0 is the slash line for the Yanis. I say you might as well be able to go back to that one. It was his ultimate that set up that First Blood. Layers picks up a kill on the set.
Right.
That's not something I'm going to be able to really slander them for. It's just a good top pick. But I think that if anything for the Scarabs and P's and B's, Game 2 needs to change, prioritize making sure inbound is comfortable. I don't think he really is an offensive support style player, and the Bolts kind of preyed on him. They banned out his God Pool. He falls back to the Geb, and he kind of gets bullied a little bit throughout that match.
Yeah, tough for Layers as well. I mean, 5k damage just above the Geb on his side. To be fair, above Lasbro on the other side as well. Was pretty heavily mitigated by the 4 upgraded shells that the Bolts threw his direction. So that's absolutely something to look towards. I think the Bolts, though, you keep riding this trend line. I think they're very happy with the way, obviously, that Game 1 went for them. So if you're able to kind of ride that high, maybe even continue with some of the same draft strategy that you had there in Game 1, maybe make some sense in the one moment where Ramsey's not staring over my shoulder. She's literally passed out. That's her... Wait, this is the wrong side. Yeah, her head is somehow perched up and over the pillow, like, literally so tired that comfort, I guess, doesn't matter. We'll see what picks and bans, though, have in store for us for game number 2. We'll see if the Scarabs do indeed adapt, change up their draft entirely. Bolts can stick with more of the same here. But I agree, Miff. I think looking towards that support role will be important here. I think the Geb good on the back foot, and you know, if you're assuming you're fighting on the back foot, maybe that pick then makes some sense. We talked to the casters, we talked to the other guys a little bit in the meantime between game 1 and us here now on the desk, Miff. Do you want to see more proactive picks out of the Solar Scarabs, or do you feel like that's maybe forcing a play style that's not quite theirs? Do you want to see more aggressive picks, or are you okay with leaning into the style of play that these players might have?
It seems to me that the Scarabs really do want to play reactively around the Bolt strategy of invading that purple buff, but they didn't really pick up a draft that can do it. If you know the Bolts are going to bring the fight to the duo lane, pick a duo lane that can fight in. On Her was a very good start for them. One of the best early game hunters in the game. Level 5, fantastic power spike, really uncontestable damage. And then what do they match it up with? The slowest rolling, just defensive support possible inside of Geb. if you can't fight with just your duo lane, at least pick up a global ultimate, something like a Thor, so that maybe Layers is able to rotate over earlier, try and play reactively there, or pick an aggressive mid laner and choose to fight elsewhere while the Bolts are allocating all their resources to the duo lane. Any number of things could change for the Scarabs, but I think things definitely need to change.
Well, look, nutrition is important. Barracuda, certainly a proponent of that one. A Nutrigrain bar will fuel the Bolt Hunter here in game number 2. Interesting priority here, I think, on the bans for the Bolts, Mifflin. Yemoja, Heimdall, Yemoja specifically, not all that surprising. Heimdall up there against Zapman, but obviously some pressure being applied to Layers here with that Thor ban coming across the screen here for the Bolts.
Yeah, maybe the Bolts are predicting a little bit of the same adaptations that I was, but this does leave the Scarabs open to pick something that could fit more in line with Inbound's God Pool. If they want to go to the Sobek here, make sure that Jake isn't able to run that one back, it's going to fit that God Pool a lot better and kind of stifle some of that early aggression that the Bolts are going for. It is a Sobek hover from the Scarabs here. We'll see whether or not they elect to lock that one in, and they will. Okay. Already, I'm liking this draft a lot more.
Right, that's the change. I mean, kind of opposite mindsets there between the Geb and the Sobek. So an immediate pivot for the Scarabs, and I think one that you and I and so are Scarabs fans and probably people, anyone who's watching this one, probably feeling pretty happy about. Now, the Serket, I think, is interesting here, Mifflin. Lasbra, like, second to last in damage there in that game, but how much weight do you put on a Serket damage number when you build and you're kind of playing the way Lasbra was? Is it more based around setup and you can't read into that damage too much?
It's hard to say. How often were the Scarabs really putting up a resistance on these fights? How many opportunities did Lasbra really have to go in there and deal some damage? But I don't want to talk about Serket anymore because two pretty awesome picks have been locked in since then. Ares and Danzaburou. Let's go ahead and start on the Chaos side, the Scarabs. I really like this duo lane. I think this is our first look at Danzaburou in the SPL, piloted by Zapman. That's going to be a pretty fun one. He's going to be able to play much more aggressively this time around, has CC immunity in the ultimate, as well as if he does want to go back to that reactive play style of counter-engaging, Danzaburou's one of the best at it. He creates a no-fight zone, essentially, when he uses that third ability, meaning that Barracuda can't auto-attack trade unless Zapman just feels like it. If he decides to run away, that Rocket is going to be phenomenal as well, and as we already highlighted, that CC immunity should come in to help against this Ares lock-in, which is going to be very strong up against this Sobek and Achilles. I like this draft from both teams a lot.
That's always a good place to start, right? After a tough game in game number 1 for the Scarabs, at least set yourself up for success in the draft phase. What you never want to do is lose immediately through picks and bans, where your team is just at such a lopsided disadvantage that you can't compete. And the Solar Scarabs have not done that. They've given themselves a great fighting chance here in the pick ban phase. Now adding a Scylla to their roster, I think that's a good pick here. But then the question becomes, Mifflin, is there enough setup throughout the rest of this draft that the Scylla will be able to get off enough of that burst damage and be effective in these fights? The main core of that is usually solo and support between Achilles and Sobek. Do you think it's there?
It is there, but it's hard to execute on. That Achilles stun, not the longest stun in the game, not the easiest one to set up, so Scylla, or Baronic rather, going to be very fast in the trigger. If he's following up on either Achilles or Sobek, that Pluck, fantastic CC, but you got to follow that trajectory, make sure that if they do have any mobility up, whoever is Pluck, that you're tracing that down as well. I think the most consistent CC that they have to once it lands, not really consistent to land, is going to be that taunt from Danzaburou. If Zapman's able to utilize that incredibly well, then I'm a Monster all of a sudden is going to be very, very easy to land.
Great point there, Mifflin. And then another matchup that we're starting to get more used to seeing is Scylla versus the Raijin. Raijin's been a very popular pick at the SEC level, and now a couple of plays here at the SPL level. Raijin, Mifflin, somewhat safe, able to put out the Raiju, deal good damage, slows his targets, and then with the Taiko drums, pretty versatile in how you want to use that ultimate. Do you like the Raijin pick up here for the Bolts?
The Raijin pickup is a deceptive counter pick into Danzaburou. If Danzaburou's hiding inside his third ability, inside those bamboo shoots, and the Raiju connects, that dot damage not only acts as a slow, but will knock you out of leaf form as well. So I'll be very interested to see how this Raijin prioritizes his targets in the team fight. Talk about setup, Dave. We were thinking about the wrong stuff. Danzaburou setup, Sobek setup, who cares? Windfire Wheels from the Najad, that's the combo you're looking for. Layers and Baronic gonna have to Voltron up together and work to make sure that those ultimates come to fruition.
Mifflin, let me toss you a softball here. What do you think that this Solar Scarabs draft is looking to do here in Game 2?
I think maybe Naja will probably use the sash, and if they have beads, he'll wait a second, and if they don't have beads, he'll press
great.
4, and then Scylla's gonna press 4.
That's the ultimate, right?
And then hopefully they die. Yeah, the ultimate, unless they rebind it. Pretty sure Bobby's ult's on his R or something, but that's beside the point.
No way, right? I guess I don't know. I'm trying to figure out. There's just way too many hours invested in 1, 2, 3, 4 for me, I think, to ever pivot away from that. All right, so then the Solar Scarabs draft, straightforward. You want to provide some lockdown. Naja, Achilles, Sobek, Danzaburo able to do plenty of that for mid laner in Baronic on this Scylla. Look over at the Bolts draft, though, Mifflin. What do you think the core of this team wants to do? A lot of it is going to have to be mitigating that CC as well as getting onto this Scylla in the backline. Do you think the Bolts have the opportunity to do that?
Oh, they certainly do. Cavalry Charge is going to act as a spearhead to work their way towards the Scylla, or even the Danzaburo going to have a very hard time dealing with this Guan Yu once he's able to connect that Tao Lu Assault. Outside of that, you still have the dive potential of Surket, especially considering we saw Lazar likes that Bruiser build with Shifter Shield immediately on Chile, meaning that Baronic's going to have to deal with that as well. And then just talking about beads burning potential, Ares is a beads burner, at least a CC immune ult burner, so he's going to be able to strip away resources every single time his ultimate's available to him as well. But there is an interesting matchup. Way back in the day, Raijin versus Scylla was considered a pretty bad matchup for Raijin. His ultimate is disjointed damage, slows him down. When you hit the drum, it slows you down even more. Going to I'm a Monster, it's a pretty big and easy target to hit.
So do you think then, Mifflin, that the mid lane matchup between these two mages is maybe where this game kind of lives and dies for one team or the other? Obviously much more complex than that. Such a small micro game that builds into the macro game. But are you keeping your eyes on the mid laners here in the matchup for game 2?
I would like to see the mid laners be a little bit more present. And by mid laners, I mean mid laner. I want to see Baronic be a little bit more present in the early game, mid game, at any point of the game, instead of going 0-0-0, getting involved a little bit earlier on. But I'm keeping my eyes almost entirely on how the Scarabs elect to play around their duo lane, especially considering how the Bolts played the duo lane last time around. If they're going to send people over to invade your purple 7 times in a row, first time it happens, shame on you. If they do it 2 games in a row, all the blame's on me.
Well, it's very important, right? I mean, you talk about Baronic and needing to show up in this game. Absolutely. I mean, the rest of the game was kind of crumbling around the Scarabs there in game 1, so you can kind of throw a lifeline, I think, to any of the 5 players, kind of forgiving maybe lower damage numbers there in game number 1, but Giannis very low on the damage chart. Scylla, kind of the same thing, right? You got these big, sudden, bursty type abilities, and if you're still at the bottom of the damage charts, that's massive that your team is missing. So, Baronic definitely a massive role to play here for the Solar Scarabs. On the other side, Barracuda bringing out this pick in the Jingwei. I think Barra had a fantastic game in game number 1 on the Chernobog. What are your expectations for the Jingwei?
I'm expecting more of the same, potentially a slightly more defensive playstyle from Barracuda this time around. Not going to have that aggressive ultimate instead. Likely going to be saving it just to escape out of the Danzaburo ultimate, or potentially if he's getting aggressed on by the jungler. Outside of that, maybe we see Barracuda play that aggressive Jingwei style around the purple buff. It's yet to be seen.
Could we have another 2-0 on our hands? Let's jump into game number 2 between the Bolts and the Scarabs.
Thank you, Dolson and Mifflin. Still Finch and Gore here as we move into this critical game number 2. And there are some adjustments. I think the most important one, layers on this Naja. He has got to be the pace setter. As far as I can tell, that's where Baronic getting involved more is going to come from. The easiest thing he's ever going to do is hit his damage off Windfire Wheels.
Yeah, I mean, being Naja, I think this is the best setup playmaker that you could have in the jungle, right? Like, you've got so much that you can follow up on if you're a mid laner. So Baronic, it should theoretically be a very easy game for him. He shouldn't have to rely on himself too much. Layer should always be there with a sash or, like you said, the Windfire Wheels to make sure things go their way. If that's not, oh, well, hey, cool, there's a Sobek block, an Achilles stun. Even Zapman has some CC to set up a Scylla here. I think the Scarabs team fight looks a lot better. Speaking of Zapman, I mean, the first Danzaburo that we get to see in the SPL. And I'm excited to see that. The Abrorius Rocket is maybe the thing I'm most excited to see out of him. His ult being good in the middle of a team fight definitely is going to catch my eye. But I want to watch this lane. I've watched a lot of Zapman's stream. He will bounce around every hunter that exists in the game, but I love seeing him come back to this Danzaburo. I want to know what it can do, because, I mean, Jake, look, he's already low. I think this could be a really fun lane to watch.
Yeah, fun if you like the Scarabs. Listen, Danzo does a whole bunch of damage in a big area, and there's just not much that you can do about it if your Bear already has his beads forced off great work from inbound and then forced to run. Well, take a look across the map. Isn't this a more aggressive Scarabs already? I hope they can keep this going. Remember, they got first blood in Game 1. I think it was their first and only blood, if I'm not mistaken, so hopefully here in this one we can see them get a little bit more going. I won't overreact just off a little bit in the early. I don't want Layers and Veronic to kind of disappear in the mid for them once again.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting dynamic for the Scarabs as this game goes on. But, Finch, I'll be honest, like, I just have one caveat. It's just do something. I don't care if you lose. Like, I've got bad news for the Scarabs and for most of these SPL teams. The minute you lose the first one, it took us till week 3 last year before we even saw a 3-game set. So it might take a little bit before we start seeing that. Or the Scarabs can turn it around right here, right now, and break expectations from Season 7 coming into Season 8. But just something. As long as they're proactive, I don't care.
Well, Inbound's been chasing Lasbra, so gotta think this is the result that was desired as Lasbra falls for first blood. Listen, this is the Inbound passive for the way, by the way, yeah, that somehow they managed to sneak away first blood. But also, Inbound looks like he's legitimately throwing his life away and somehow turns it around to his team finding a kill.
It's a really weird thing. Imagine it's a worm. It's bait that stabs itself with the hook because it knows that it will also kill the fish. Like it is sacrificing itself to make sure that someone on the bolts goes down. Because that's twice, like in a row, that not only have they swiped that first bolt, but he's done the exact same thing. And I think it's really maybe impressive? I don't know how to describe it. It's definitely a different style than what I'm used to seeing. But I like that his aggression's still there, right? I mean, yes, you're technically, quote-unquote, behind because you had that death, but getting aggressive, forcing Barra and Jake to kind of play away from Zap, you're keeping Zapman safe, although you are now putting yourself in a really bad spot.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing that Inbound embodies the mentality that Mifflin likes to say, which is that as a support, your life is basically useless. Throw it away at all times to save the carries, please. Sometimes, though, he's just trading it, and we don't always know what the value is. In comes Lasbra, Jake, and Barracuda goes to zone away the enemy ADC. I like this. Means Inbound gets no backup, and it's an easy cleanup kill there for Lasbra. Not bad, getting involved early on this Cirquette pick yet again. But sooner or later, Layers and Baronic are going to have that combination online. I expect they'll be getting aggressive too.
Dude, Lasbra, pre-4 minutes, duo lane ganks. They just go together. It's just a thing that is going to happen. Whether or not it's successful is always going to be a different story back and forth. But I think it's interesting to see that he's still keeping that up. He has not changed that part of his style. What I want to see is this. Layers getting into it. Inbounds over here. Zapman's ready. Of course, they're not necessarily getting anything just yet. But the survivability, Jingwei is going to be very difficult to take down for any instance. Sobek is going to have trouble dealing with her. I think this Danzaburo, even though he can deal a lot of damage, is going to have trouble locking her down. Same thing for Layers. Like, if you come over here and Barra has beads, he's safe. You come over here and Barra has ults, he's probably safe. Like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of deaths there for the Hunter until they can really start burning down those utilities.
And that's a good point. They're going to need a bit of a safer commit they can make to try and force out these beads so that it's easier for Layers to then all-in commit with his ultimate. It should be a bit easier for him. In the last game, Inbound was really struggling to find ways to engage on that Geb. I don't think he had Blink at all, right? So he was kind of struggling to get in at points in that game. But on this Sobek, that should be a bit easier. His is a bit more built in. You're just looking for the pluck, and then hopefully you're throwing it back to the team, and then Layers and Baronic, Zap, and SOT can do their thing. So we'll keep our eyes on how they look to make that work, because it's a big grouping for the Bolts on the right side of the map this time. They have been moving around a lot, but there is a ward there. Lasbra won't be sneaking up on anyone, and yes, Solar Troll has backed up. Said, I ain't letting you guys catch me out this time, but it looks like he might just end up losing his blue buff. Not much he can do when he's the only one. But the Scarabs are going over towards Duo in response, trying to invade the purple, and maybe even Layers can get there towards the red. Vin is already working on it. Looks like they were able to steal the red, and they should be able to get Venenu. I'm a monster off the mark, still get it. That's how they respond to pressure on the right, by invading twice on left.
And that's really good pickup. Venenu, it was maybe, what, 1 hit away? That was not a lot of damage necessary to swipe away that red buff. Good timing on the side of the Scarabs. It feels like a different team already, right? I mean, just the first 5 minutes is better than the last 20 minutes of whatever I watched in Game 1. This is what I wanted to see out of them. And this is why I still want to be a believer in it. Not only that, but they burn down Venenu's ult there. They get his beads on top of it. Like, they burn so much utility in the mid lane. The Layers should now have a pretty easy target for the next minute and a half or so to make sure he can lock them down. This is going to be the start of where that aggression can come from, right? Very small lead, 500 gold. Doesn't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of a game. 6 minutes in, it does mean you can start finding that pressure, forcing them to feel a little more awkward. Both Scorpions have been taken down. Forf and Gorp are out of here. Gold Fury is going to sunning in. Scarabs need more pressure to ensure that they can get that. And unlike last game, find a lead that they can maintain. And it looks like they're already putting pressure onto this Gold Fury.
Well, at least come over and grab the Oracles. They're not quite ready this early to commit for the actual objective itself, but this has been certainly some improvement there from. They need to keep this up. Show us they can make some of these adjustments, like when there's pressure in right, find a way for you to put pressure in left when you're favored with a numbers advantage. They've done that so far. Still haven't really seen what I think is this team's core combo really come to fruition yet, which is the Layers ult and then the Baronic follow-up. That's got to be critical for them, or really even inbound setup in the Baronic follow-up. The I'm a Monster in a kill they got didn't even really connect. Did kind of force Vin back into what was certain doom, but kind of just goes to show that I think those pieces still haven't quite lined up the way they want, but they've got time this game. They're getting proactive, they're responding, and they should be able to make it work. As Haddix wants to go for the blue buff invade, can't do it on his own. They didn't rotate 3 members over this time, so Solar Scarab's able to defend.
Nothing big changing in terms of rotations. Get a little bit of pressure elsewhere, but nothing sweeping in favor of either of these squads. Red buff being picked up by Vin. So ideally this means that it's going to be a little more equalized for him, but you've got a level deficit there in mid, a level deficit there in jungle, which is where it's going to be the most important. This could be a big turnaround.
There's the ultimate. And that does force out Layers' ultimate, so that is no escape traded out for Wind, Fire, Wheels. And I think that's going to be a bit of a problem for Jake most of this game here, if they can't find another way to force out those cooldowns, because they all have these CC immune ults as Haddix and SOT trade blows, and that's SOT forced to use the Purification Bead in response to Haddix going up on the ultimate, so all kinds of cooldowns being forced around the map.
And these timings are where you're going to need to find a little more aggression. Right now, you know, SOT's beads are down. That seems like a pretty easy target for Lasber to go in. Still has his ult. Should be pretty easy lockdown, especially early on. This Achilles hadn't even finished that shifters yet that we see potentially going into, so it's a lot of damage that can still be done to him.
Now he's got to be careful, but he has backup this time, able to use Charge Prey to escape, so now it's time for Lasbra to be the one that's under siege, and inbound with the wraparound, takes care of Lasbra. I'm a Monster, lands point blank, and Haddix is now the new target. Crush connects, Sash connects, and Baronic gets on the board with his second kill of the game. A much more aggressive and active Solar Scarabs.
I like the way they play that. And bigger for Jake, I mean, almost a replica of what we were talking about earlier, right? Gets very low, is almost out of position, getting locked down by the bolts, and yet this time, instead of trading his life out, is able to turn one of those kills around, not for himself, which makes things a lot better. Last game, we were talking about him being at a 2-level deficit. This time around, it's Jake. This Ares was a very dominant force, I believe, during Worlds, during the latter half of last year. I don't feel like it's really catching on right now.
Well, can they stick this? Inbound is so low. They've got good confirmation, but yes, they can't now. They drop the Fury back incredibly low, so they've got to send Baronic back in to find a way to steal. Can't do it, and now inbound might just die from the chain damage. Not enough. A shell comes out, and they survive, but Olympus Bolts can just do this Fury. A bit of a miscalculation there ends up resulting in this Fury very likely going the other direction, Core. Again, I like that they're, looking for these objectives, trying to start fights, but that time may have gotten away from them.
Well, last game, we watched them kind of fumble after the objectives. They get an early Gold Fury there for the Scarabs in Game 1, and then it didn't matter about 2 minutes later when the gold lead all of a sudden comes back to nil. If they have a little bit to play off the map, maybe they can take a notes out of the Bolts book and recognize that it's not the end-all be-all. Gold Fury is a really good objective to get early on, but it isn't going to be the camel or the straw that breaks the camel's back here. If they can get in there, maybe invade some of those jungle buffs and help deal with something elsewhere on the map. The downside is, while they've been proactive, it has not quite been proactive enough to really swing all of the buffs in the jungle in their favor the way that the Bolts had last time. I think Mifflin said it, 7 times in a row that purple buff got taken over on left side by the Bolts with an invade. And you haven't really seen that same pressure. So you get that Gold Fury, it makes the gold a little more even here, so the Bolts are back in it. But they're still down in experience right now, mainly the jungle, mainly the mid laner that are ahead. And that's where we've been talking about for the last 2 games. I'm still kind of waiting for it to come to full fruition. We've seen tastes of it, hints of it throughout this game. More from Layers, more from Boronic, and now they're starting to enter that period. 11 towards 15 is those levels where I expect to see more kind of positioning for aggression out of the Scarabs. I think that's where Najah's going to be able to shine, especially with Scylla behind them. Obviously, Scylla gets way better the closer to 20 you get, but now that your Crush is all the way maxed out, you have that bonus power there. You already know it's going to hit like a truck along with I'm a Monster. This is a really good position for them to start taking their just inherent lead in the mid-game and try to turn it into something big.
I think that's got to be the call as inbound gets caught out by Lasbrin. The jungle charge prey connects onto Haddix, but still no real aggression on the back of it. But Layers has been targeted. Crush lands to provide some backup. I'm a Monster connects, but Layers is flattened. And in comes Venenu up on top of the Tycho drums. Can't really connect, and Zapman wants to look for him, wants to put Venenu down, and does it. Great work by the ADC getting involved. Haddix turns back around looking for the stuns, but instead it costs him his life. 2 for 1 in favor of the Scarabs.
And honestly, that 2 for 1, that might be one of the last times they get to do that. 2 Layers here, not yet level 12, hasn't picked up that second relic, but after something like that, when you get chained and crippled away, so as Najah, you can't do anything, I can't imagine that second relic becomes anything other than the beads, right? Like, it has to be some form of CC immunity just to stay alive in those engagements. But you get 2 kills off the back of it, you get the pyro. Again, you completely forget that you just lost the Gold Fury because you find yourselves a proactive play on the map that gets you a lead. This is good so far from the Scarabs. But again, it's that I'm worried about complacency, man. After watching last game, there's not a lot you can do to convince me that a team just sat back and watched a Phoenix fall, except for what the Scarabs did. And so I think there's a lot of room for them to still maybe slip up. So don't fall into that mentality. Don't think, okay, there's nothing we can do here. I like the way Inbound is looking for these kills, even if sometimes it does feel like he is hooking himself up to the end of a fishing line and just hoping for a bite. I think him and Layers are really going to be the true setup. And Boronic's already 2-0-2. Just keep funneling those kills into that Scylla. Let her keep going the way that it is, because now the Aegis has been picked up there for Boronic. You've got beads now on Layers. It feels like they're in a much better position to win these 3v3, 4v4 skirmishes in the jungle.
Still, though, I feel like we haven't seen what I've been calling the core combo from this team materialize. And I wonder if it's still a bit of trouble finding these softer engages. Hard to complain, though, Gore. This is a much better look from these Scarabs here in game number 2. As Inbound can't quite find Vera there with the pluck, but it's Jingwei anyway. Probably wouldn't be the end of the day for her, as she's pretty good on the back of those knockups. So with the Fury down, coming up soon, though, and being a little too early for Fire to really be considered, wouldn't be surprised if we see our next big skirmish happen over there on the Gold Fury part of town. And if that is the case, then the Scarabs, again, I want to see him try and put some pressure on these relics. Lasbrin and Vens are coming back up soon, so if you can't find them soon, then you'll have to take them off cooldown yet again. But Layers goes in, and Venenu is so ready for it, immediately into the ultimate. And that was Layers trying to make the attempt, it just was not there. Ven had the ultimate perfectly timed.
Yeah, and that had to be perfectly timed. His beads aren't even up yet. They're coming up right now. So he would have been completely eviscerated from the map had he not been able to hit that on the hair trigger that he had it. So really good play from Vin, but now they're missing a big portion of their ult. Can they get the burst damage?
Looks like they want to move in. Inbound's the early target, though, but makes his way out healthy. There's Layers ulting, and I'm a Monster. Should be waiting. There's the combo, but it's on to Jake, who survives the initial. So that is, I believe, the actual first attempt, but because it ends up being the Ares, is the only target it can grab, he's able to make it out of there healthily, and they might even start to siege this Gold Fury with Solar Scarabs backing and a lot of their key ultimates on cooldown, and that seems to be the call. And Zapman met with Jake the second he steps around the corner. The bolts get the Fury cleanly, and it's Oni nonetheless, and Zapman forced to retreat on the back of a rocket.
And they're trying to get away now cleanly. Bera's in an awkward position. Lasber's low. Haddix is low. Jake is low. SOT wants some blood, but it doesn't look like they're going to be able to close the gap this time around. Great play once again there for the Bolts. You trade 3 ults for 3 ults, 4 ults for 4 ults now. The Haddix and Zapman end up throwing theirs on at the very tail end of that. And you really bait the Scarabs into an awkward position. They invest so much to kill Jake. And even though healing was nerfed, you get to see how combat healing, especially for Guan Yu, is the reason he's still getting first picked, banned out in some of these cases. He hasn't won all of his games. Both times the Oni Warriors picked him up. Wasn't able to eke that one out, so he's not the end-all, be-all in terms of winning you a game. But it does showcase that it will absolutely help deal with a Scylla ult in the middle of the fight. Jake goes from virtually no health to being able to zone, thanks to the help Haddix was able to bring to him. And that's something that the Scarabs are going to have to deal with. Maybe not as heavy-handed as we would have talked about healing last year, but you can already see a Cursed Ankh online for them. I wouldn't mind seeing either a Brawlers, maybe a Divine here for Boronic, something to help stipend it a little bit more regularly than what we'd see out of a Cursed Ankh. But there's still a lot of avenues, and it's not quite as much to worry about. But those resets afterward are going to be awful. They have to be very careful around Haddix and kind of take the gloves off. You need to treat him harshly very early on, or else that healing is going to come back to bite you.
Scarab's going to need to come up with a resolution, some kind of answer to the sustain over there for the Bolts. And the Bolts have put themselves right back into this game, not that it was ever truly out of reach, as the Fatal Strike allows Solo Retrol to escape. That's something I've noticed this set as well, Gore. I don't think SOT has really gotten much help at all over here in solo. If his blue buffs are invaded, that's just kind of the way it is. If he's getting pressured from Lasper, that seems to just be the way it is, and they're trusting him to deal with some of this additional pressure. And so far he's done it, actually ahead of Haddix here, 0-4. Yeah, for the young lad, in a good spot here as Pyromancer comes up. That appears to be what they're fighting over, everyone except Bera, who's just going to split push that left tier 1.
Now, I think Layers is a phenomenal player in the jungle, but I do think what we're watching and what we're going to see over the next few weeks with the Scarabs is kind of those growing pains of jumping not only into a new team, but into the SBL, right? Figuring out how to deal with this pressure, because like you said, SOT doesn't seem to be getting too much help, and where does that help come from? Well, it theoretically should be Layers. Naja's not necessarily the one that I'm always thinking of if I'm thinking who's going to come to my lane and absolutely 100-0 the opponent that I need help with. But it is someone that is going to at least be able to alleviate some of that pressure. And you can see, you know, he's got a lot of farm going in his mind. We talked about it a lot in Game 1. He's 2 levels up over Lasbra. But how much of that are you then sacrificing so that your team maybe isn't coming into their full form here, right? How much does it cost them? SOT still technically a level up. Same thing there for Boronic. So at least in the 2 lanes that you're supposed to be impacting the most, they're not struggling too hard, but they are having to use a lot of their utility to maybe disengage, at least in the case of SOT, as we were talking. So I'm interested and excited to watch this as it comes along, because I think he's going to get back to what we would expect as like the true Layers form by like week 3. But this is that moment where it's kind of the metal being tested, right? Like, how well can you bounce back, and how well can you still impact this game, even though you haven't necessarily been the one leading the way so far. 3 assists, 1 kill. He's been part of the 4 of the 6 kills. I can't really argue against that, but still want to see more.
Agreed. Bera was able to find 2 towers on that lone split push. That's valuable. Haddix going to come grab the tier 1 in solo in response, but the Scarabs were able to get another tier 1 in duo as well, and now Zapman contesting Bera for a chance to brute force this one down. So now both teams kind of spreading out the map a bit, trying to find some undefended towers they can take down for some quick and easy goal, and opening up the map a bit as well, make things a little bit harder for the opposition to fall back towards the safety of sort of that 6th man in a fight. But it looks like aside from that, these teams are staying back. I think that kind of prolonged time where Bera was able to push on his own has really helped to even things back up. As great as this early was for the Scarabs, things are now essentially the same way they were in Game 1, where for as much as we talked about how important those first 20 minutes were and all the back and forth, it's worked out to kind of all together, even though there are leads in these individual matchups, team to team, they end up being very much even.
And this is where the 5-on-5 really starts to come to fruition, right? We expect more fights. Primal Fury is about to come up. Fire Giant's still just sitting over there, patiently waiting for when someone dares step into the FG pit to try and fight him. It's going to be fun to watch, because this is where the Scarabs, again, I'm going to use the phrase, metal will be tested, because you did well this time around in the first 20 minutes. In the lane phase, you were a little more proactive. You were able to strip away some jungle. You won some fights. How can you transition that into this late game, right? The Bolts suffered against the Leviathans yesterday because their 5-on-5 just wasn't quite as clean, and that's what happened to the Scarabs in the first game. One good team fight from the Bolts was really all it took for them to take decisive control of the rest of the game. This is where the Scarabs have to win or have to go even at a minimum to make sure that the Bolts just run away.
Clock lands onto Jake. He's in trouble. Meanwhile, a 2v2 is developing on the right side, and so far, the Scarabs seem to be on top of it. SOT getting involved, and involved in a big way as he takes care of Benenu and continues the hunt onto Lasbra. Layers trying to back him up, but cannot do so safely. So SOT and Layers back it up. Meanwhile, the rest of their team can now regroup. And I think it's worth mentioning here, for Layers' job is going to be real difficult if they can't find a way to put these bees and the second layer of CC immune ults on cooldown more safely.
Yeah.
That'll be tough for them to really get in and all-in commit. And now the Bolts want to try to all-in commit. SOT is their target, but he has proved to be Houdini once already. Can he pull it off a second time? Makes it out of trouble easily. And surprised the Bolts still want to fight at a numbers disadvantage. They just don't want to give up this Fury for free. And they've even got a chance to remove Layers. Lasbra catches him out with a little bit of help from Barracuda, so now they return back to the Fury fight.
Ults are coming back up here for the Bolts, for Lasbra and Haddix. They're going to be able to re-engage here, and Haddix is back on the horse, ready to go back in.
Yeah, the Bolts trusted that they had the re-engage potential, and they are absolutely correct. The chains land. SOT forced to use the Fatal Strike to try and disengage, but Lasbra will prove too strong as the poison ticks, and they find yet another kill. Ends up being 2 for 1, if I'm not mistaken, across the map. And somehow the Bolts recognize they still have strength around this sustain to re-engage.
I mean, it takes a lot of bravery as a team to recognize that without your mid laner, who I would argue is, at least in this portion of the game, one of like your primary sources of damage, you can survive not just for 30 seconds, but then come out and win the fight without him. Vin, just now joining him over here for the Fire Giant, it wasn't around for any of that. Has his ult back, beats and Aegis are up for him, so he's going to be feeling pretty safe here. This is just a good call.
Wow.
The Scarabs just can't do anything to deal with the Bolts. This might be a consolation Primal Fury, and you're lucky even if you get that. Lasbra and Jake are here to try and stop it.
Let's see what Jake can find on the back of these chains. Looks like the Scarabs are forced to retreat. In fact, the ultimate coming out from Zatman, perhaps using it to re-engage, comes back in, but Lasbra has jumped back out. This is a mirror image of what happened in game 1, isn't it? Around the 20-minute mark, suddenly things weren't close. Right side Phoenix being sieged, but the combo comes to fruition. Layers and Veronic making it work, and Lasbra gets buried. But Barracuda winning the battle. They're just losing the most important structure on the map. Yes, they do manage to get these kills on the Lasbra and Jake, but by no means worth what's traded on this right side Phoenix. But to be fair, no chance they would be able to get backs off once that started to return to defend.
Now you have to work up against Barra. Granted, Barra alone versus 4, maybe not something I'm going to back with my bets, but with the backup he has here, Tier 2 tower still going to be in danger of falling, but this could be a very easy fight for the Bolts to actually turn around and win. They still have the sustain thanks to Haddix, and with Vin and Barra's damage, it's very difficult to get anywhere. Tier 1 towers are forfeit, but Tier 2s, those are worth defending as of right now, and the Bolts, they're able to find anything in the next minute or so while Solar Troll's down, and maybe even when he respawns, so they can pick him back up. It's going to open the door for them to run down either those last 2 towers there in mid to make sure that the Titan is a nice, easy health to break through, or maybe go over here on the left and knock down a mirroring Phoenix to the one they just took. And also, Finch, this is one of those few moments, I didn't even think about it until I saw that sliver of health that is left. The Tier 2 towers in this patch were just buffed about 300 health. And that's about how much is sitting there on that left-hand tower. I think that is just a little bit of luck there for the Bolts.
Yep, it ends up keeping this game a bit closer, especially in these Tier 2s in particular, where perhaps they would have already fallen. This is, it's tough, man. It feels like these games kind of ended up in the same position. They're virtually even, you know, not necessarily, but close enough to where there wasn't a huge difference. And at the 20-minute mark, things got out of control in favor of the Bolts. That is Awesome Jake engaging Blink ult and forcing Zatman to respond with his ultimate. Keeps his beads and Aegis available. But now the Bolts can just march right on down Broad Street. Mid Tier 1 taken. and they can start looking for this mid-tier 2 as well, and Lazarus looking for the flank, looping around and engaging. Zapman is the target, and they all in commit to inbound on the front line, even using the Taiko drums to keep him close. Shell comes out and inbound lives. But that means now the mid-Phoenix exposed just like the left.
Barra still, well, I should mention Venenu and Haddix, but specifically Barra still has that Fire Giant buff for a little bit longer here. He's the most important one to hold on to it because he's going to be the one dealing the most damage to these structures. Helps there with that tier 2, but it's going to help very much against this Phoenix. This is where the Scarabs kind of lost me in game number 1. I'd like to see this get into the fight and force it to happen.
Players has him. Baronic follow-up is not there, and Lazarus still survives. Baronic was just too far away is all. And he falls to Haddix looking for an I'm a Monster, make it a double. As Haddix removed inbound, the young rookie making his name known here in Season 8 so far, as he claims 2 lives himself. And the Scarabs get lower and lower, but so are the Bolts. But only the Bolts have the Fire Giant, only the Bolts have Guan Yu healing to sustain as Layers moves in with the Sash, but Lazarus follows up and has the damage. Yes, they lose Venenu, but Zapman and Layers drop to the wrath of Barracuda, and this game just might be over. They shouldn't even be able to go beyond this middle Phoenix and push past SOT to take this game.
And Finch, I gotta give credits to him. Haddix gets a lot of the love for the healing here. But Awesome Jake with that bolster defense is really helping out in the middle of these team fights. A little bit of healing on there to sprinkle into the engagements. Just really clean. Look, after game 1, I was very nervous about what I had seen from the Scarabs. Like, scared enough to wonder if this team was going to work out or if we were going to be waiting a little while before they showed up. In game 2, they showcased that they do have an early game, they do have a mid game. What they need to work on now is that 5v5 grouping. That was a really well-executed team fight portion from the Bolts. About 20 minutes in, as you had highlighted, both games where they really start to run away with things, and that's when they started to get everything and that synergy that we were used to feeling from them come through. I think if the Scarabs can get that on lock, they're going to be a pretty deadly team. It's just depending on how long it's going to take to get there.
Yeah, this is a team that I think might need a little bit more time, but huge for the Bolts and their fans. They were able to get one on the board. Congrats to them on a well-earned dub. It'll be a couple minutes, then we'll be right back for the breakdown after this.
It's an improvement for both teams, but unfortunately for the Scarabs, not enough here in game number 2. And one thing that these players can't improve is the hardware that they're playing on. We want to thank Alienware yet again for sponsoring us this year in the SPL, outfitting us with a whole bunch of cool hardware. All the pros are playing on brand new Alienware PCs and monitors, be using their headsets and stuff all year long. So thanks again to Alienware for partnering with us here in the SPL season number 8. Make sure to check them out on social media at Alienware. That's their Twitter and their Instagram. And AlienwareArena.com, an area for you to join their community, plenty of giveaways, all that sort of fun stuff at AlienwareArena.com. So shout outs to Alienware once again. Mifflin, I think improvement, right, is a fair way of putting it for the Scarabs after game number 2 here. Still not enough. They had 10 kills on the board, but it was not enough to overcome the Bolts in their onslaught there in the late game.
In game 2, it feels like a little bit of a disjoint in team fights. Occasionally, we'd see the Windfire wheels come through, no follow-up. It's okay, happens every now and then, but even around Fire Giants and Gold Furies, there was a point in that game where it really felt like, alright, Scarabs, 4,000 gold up, they're able to really run it, and then they group up around the Gold Fury, reset it twice, inbound essentially dies to it, and then from there, it really felt like the Bolts, after stealing the Fury itself, had control of that match. It was a slow burn this time around, but I think that we saw some flashes of life from the Scarabs.
That's right. If you're a Scarabs fan, you know, you knew that there were going to be some transitional pains from the 3v3 into the SPL. You knew it was going to take a little bit of time. So seeing them catch on immediately from game 1 to game 2, I think adapting to playing some more aggressive picks certainly suited them between games 1 and game 2. And really, Miff, we should be focusing here as well on the Bolts and their turnaround from yesterday. Obviously, they had a very difficult matchup yesterday, the Bolts did, up against the Leviathans, but I think this is a Bolts team that immediately looks improved.
They do look a lot better, but I want to see how they perform against some of the more center-of-the-pack teams, right? The Scarabs, I think, have got a lot to prove themselves. I want to see how well... all of them? Wait.
Oh, no.
Is that 6 dudes? Oh, let's go, Bolts.
5. Actually, I saw them all working out at Lifetime a few weeks ago. They might have filmed that in that locker room right there. Maybe not, though. Bolts come out on top of this one. Here's a look at your post-game stats. Venenu, despite a 1-4-3 slash line on the Raijin, able to be picked up by the rest of the squad. I mean, we were dead even down through the rest of this game in the damage and in the kills. I mean, this all looks so close, Mifflin. Maybe you credit this one to some shot calling down the stretch there. Remember, the right side Phoenix kind of got taken for free while the Scarabs were chasing some kills on the left side of the map. Is that kind of your diagnosis after this game? I mean, it was kind of even, very back and forth between the macro and the micro game that made the difference there for the Bolts?
Yeah, I really think that the Bolts played very well reactively once the Scarabs brought it to them, right? The Scarabs start up a Gold Fury, the Bolts are there, that's my Gold Fury now. The Scarabs look at the Fire Giant for a split second, the Bolts are looking at your Phoenixes, they're looking at your Titans, things along those lines. I think that certainly the Scarabs have a lot that they can improve on, and I really do expect them to improve on it quickly, especially, as we said earlier, with Zapman kind of working as the veteran of that team.
That's right. Lasbra in the jungle, I think, looked improved from yesterday on to the win today for the Bolts. Our very own John Finch stands by with Lasbra for the post-game interview.
Thanks, Dolson. Last man, good to talk to you. First off, glad you guys got this first dub. Knew it wouldn't take too long. But what did it mean for you guys to kind of end this first week like this, essentially going 500 and being able to at least go even?
It feels really good. I would have been pretty sad if we go into the start of the season kind of sticking together with the same team and then bringing in headaches and then like losing the 2 first sets. But you know, even if we lost, I'm sure we'll be able to bring it back and everything. Even though we lost yesterday, everything felt pretty like we still feel pretty happy and like we know what we need to improve on and all that. It's the start of the season. We need to figure out the meta. So yeah, it felt pretty good.
Well, you looked good as well, man, just for what it's worth. You on this Urquette is really tough to stop. What is it about this pick that you like? Does she kind of allow you to be aggressive, or what is it?
I just get to run around, kind of do my own thing. Pretty hard to kill as well, so I just build a bit tanky and then I try to be annoying. I don't really do that much damage or anything. Just get in there, taunt, get out, maybe get ultimate on, and then sit up for win.
And both of these games were really close, kind of right up until, you know, you finally got that big separation right up to the 20-minute mark or so. What was it that kind of gave you guys the edge, even though you kind of made it into those 5v5 team fights pretty even?
I don't remember exactly what happened or what changed it, but we have Guan, we have healing, and
That's
we also
pretty
have Ares with the passive on his 2. So we have like a lot of sustain on all that. So if they don't win all in, like we felt so confident that we can just win like all these small fights that they're taking. And then Barrow was like super fat, and I think Inbound had like the Stoner Binding Wingblade Witchblade, so he was pretty squishy. So you're just saying let's just make Barrow stay alive, and then it should be GG.
Well, you mentioned, the team's largely the same. You guys just kind of added Haddix. What does his presence, now that you guys have these 2 SPL games under your belt, really mean for you? Because he had some great games today.
Yeah, he's insane, like insane mechanics. He doesn't do anything but talk about the game and play SMITE. So that's a really good addition to have on the team, and yeah, really been enjoying playing with him.
Well, you guys are looking good, Lasper. Thanks for taking some time to talk to me, man. Good luck in your future matches, and we'll get things back over to the desk to close it out.
All right, thank you.
Thanks to Finch and Lasbro for sitting down with us. I've heard nothing but high praise from Barracuda, now Lasbro, and Anu as well, about the way Haddix has been playing out of the solo lane for the Bolts. For good reason. He's absolutely been fantastic in at least the first couple of games, despite how rough the first matchup was. Myth, I think on the other side of things here, you're a Scarabs player, you're a Scarabs fan. Literally, game number 1 was not great, but you got to keep that chin up, keep moving forward, because you showed some serious potential there in game number 2 that you might be able to capitalize as the season goes on. Here are your updated standings after 4 total games here in the SPL. Leviathans, Dragons, Kings, and Bolts all grabbed themselves a win so far this weekend. Titans, Scarabs, Warriors still looking for their first. And the Valhalla Valkyries, yet to play a game, will be in action tomorrow against the Scarabs. So another chance, Myth, for the Solar Scarabs team to bounce back.
Yeah, I think that the Scarabs, that's going to be a good test for them as well. If they're able to find their footing by then, really keep your eyes on that set. But look, man, I'm a big Valkyries fan, all right? I'm really keeping my eyes on that squad in particular.
We know you're a Ducky stan through and through, Myth, so your heart lies with the Valhalla Valkyries. They go up against the Scarabs to round out our week here in the SPL. But to start off the day, 1 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, Jade Dragons versus the Camelot Kings. Dragons looked absurd today, didn't they, Mifflin? And the Kings, I think, largely as well. We thought that they were going to have a bit of a slower start. We thought the Kings were going to need a little bit more time to mesh. I think suddenly, and I've said this once or twice today, but I think suddenly this Kings versus Dragons matchup is suddenly maybe the most exciting one to look out for. Obviously, there's only a couple left, but retrospectively may now be the most exciting matchup of the weekend.
Yeah, I think that the Kings, really the expectation was they would have the growing pains because it's a squad that hasn't really worked together in the past, almost as if they'd taken similar pieces from all over the league, but they're kind of jamming it, Dave.
Jazzberry jamming it tomorrow maybe against the Jade Dragons. 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The SEC will be here, then 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The SPL kicks off. On behalf of myself, Mifflin, all the other casters, everyone back in production, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Peach it!
Oh, no!